Hey everyone, welcome to FanFic Canon. Thanks for hitting play. I'm thrilled to bring this fan-made story to life for you. If you enjoy the ride and want more narrated fanfics, smash, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss an episode. And if you want audiobook of a novel of your choice, join my Patreon. Request any title that's freely available online, and I'll produce a full narration just for you. Now, let's dive into today's adventure.
As the last of the shadow spiders departed, Changqing turned silently and stepped into the ancient tomb. Cold air slithered out from within, and with each step, the stone corridor seemed to breathe with eerie stillness. His destination, the chamber housing the cold marrow fruit, a treasure he intended to refine immediately. The moment his silhouette vanished into the tomb's depths, Mantis and Thanos exchanged a glance. Without a word, their bodies rapidly shrank, transforming into a green mantis and a black rhinoceros beetle. They took position, camouflaged on either side of the entrance like silent sentinels. Inside, the stone chamber was thick with a freezing mist. Changqing sat cross-legged at the center, the cold marrow fruit resting in his palm. It shimmered with translucent blue light, pulsing faintly like a heart of frost. Without hesitation, he inhaled deeply and brought the fruit to his mouth. Crunch! The moment his teeth pierced the icy flesh, a wave of glacial energy exploded through his meridians. Frost crept across his skin, forming a shimmering armor of thin ice. He gritted his teeth as a tide of biting spiritual energy surged through him, violent and unrestrained. But he remained unmoved, instantly channeling the nine-layered night shocking art. True energy within him spiraled into countless microvortexes, drawing in the cold torrent with insatiable hunger. His meridians widened under the pressure, his bones and muscles reforged in the crucible of cold. In his dantian, the yuan force churned with increasing density, and his cultivation, which had long plateaued, suddenly surged. In mere moments, he shattered the early Dao mortal bottleneck, barreling through the mid, late, and peak stages like thunder through a canyon. The icy essence continued to flood his core, condensing into a swirling vortex of liquid true energy, then compressing, taking shape. A nascent core, the size of a grain of rice, formed. It glowed faintly, but its aura was fierce, a sign unmistakable. The half-step Yuandan realm. Still not enough. Driven by instinct, Changqing swallowed the remaining pulp. Boom! A second explosion of frost erupted within. The energy barreled into his dantian, wrapping around the embryonic core and spinning faster, tighter, colder, until at last the transformation was complete. A dark blue yuan dan hung in the center of his dantian like a moon in a frozen sky. Thin lines etched across its surface, Dan lines, proof of an exceptionally solid foundation. So this is the power of the Yuan Dan realm. Changqing flexed his fingers. The air around his fist exploded with a pop as space itself seemed to compress. His speed, his strength, his essence, everything had undergone a qualitative leap. With a flicker, he activated Shadow Step. In the blink of an eye, he vanished from the chamber, reappearing outside the tomb in a single, ghostly afterimage. Congratulations, Master! Mantis and Thanos emerged from their camouflage and bowed deeply. Noticing the shadow spiders hadn't returned yet, Changqing reached out with his spiritual sense, connecting to the vision shared by the Zerg. His pupils contracted sharply. The once vibrant secret realm now lay barren. Trees stripped, soil upturned. The tiger bee swarm, ruthless and precise, swept through the land like a harvesting storm, erasing every trace of spiritual flora in their path. Yet they had skillfully avoided the 7 Xuanwu disciples, targeting only the hidden depths. By the time others arrived, the land was already picked clean, executed with surgical silence. Changqing smiled. The cold marrow fruit, the 9 dragons soul cauldron, the blood spirit puppet, the stolen spiritual plants, even the inherited memories of Lin Chen's past life. This expedition was a windfall, but time was running short. He summoned all his Zerg into the system space, then pulled out a teleportation jade slip and crushed it in his hand. Crack! Ripples of space pulsed outward and swallowed him whole. When the distortion faded, Changqing stood once more on the stone platform outside the secret realm. Changqing, several deacons, and Sun Tong immediately noticed his presence. Their eyes lit with surprise. Strangely, no other disciples were present. He was the first to return. Sun Tong stepped forward, inspecting him closely. "You're out early. Did something go wrong?" After all, the secret realm was open for 6 hours. Most disciples would endure till the end. Leaving early suggested either disaster or treasure. Changqing gave a calm smile. "Elder son, I've reaped enough rewards. There was no need to linger." "Is that so?" Sun Tong chuckled softly. "Then I wonder, what kind of reward did you find?" Changqing didn't answer with words. He simply released his aura. Buzz! A wave of pure, true energy burst forth, shaking the air around the platform. The deacons sneered at first, until Sun Tong's expression froze. "Yuan Dan realm?" he murmured. "Impossible." He clearly remembered Changqing was at the early Dao mortal stage just hours ago. Even Wu Mansion's top geniuses needed years to reach the Yuan Dan realm. Unless a glint of realization flashed in Sun Tong's eyes. He noticed the faint chill in Changqing's energy. Cold marrow fruit. Changqing nodded slightly and spoke. "Elder, I found a cold marrow ice lotus in the secret realm. Honest. Unapologetic. After all, the fruit had already been consumed. As for the 9-dragon soul cauldron, some secrets must stay hidden. Cold marrow fruit. I understand now." Sun Tong stroked his white beard as he regarded Changqing, his eyes carrying a trace of admiration. To encounter such an opportunity in the secret realm, your journey was indeed worthwhile. "Many thanks, elder son, for your guidance and care." Changqing replied earnestly, bowing low. "I will never forget your kindness." Sun Tong's face softened with a hint of warmth. "I did what little I could." "You owe me nothing in return," he said, then paused, his tone deepening with gravity. "But I do hope you'll honor the promise you once made. No matter how far you rise, never turn your blade against the 7 Xuanwu mansion." Changqing met his gaze solemnly and nodded. "Disciple understands." Just then, the ghost moth's mental voice whispered in his consciousness. "Master, based on Lin Shen's past life memories, this elder son won't live much longer." Changqing's heart skipped a beat. Frowning slightly, he dived into the fragmented memories of Lin Shen, sifting through the echoes of a life once lived. He soon discovered the grim truth. After returning from this very expedition, Sun Tong secluded himself for breakthrough cultivation. But his body, already aging and weakened, could no longer bear the strain. During the attempt, a surge of qi and blood tore through his heart meridians. He died alone in his chamber, his heart shattered by the violent backlash of failure. And the autopsy concluded one thing. Had a heart protection pill been present, his life might have been saved. Changqing exhaled slowly, a decision forming in his heart. Sun Tong had stood by him. He would not stand idle in return. "Elder son," he asked gently, "your cultivation is already at the peak of the Xianyang realm. Are you planning to attempt a breakthrough soon?" Sun Tong's brows raised slightly. "Indeed, my vitality diminishes by the day. If I don't attempt a breakthrough now, I may never get the chance again." Changqing hesitated, then spoke with a quiet firmness. "Before you enter seclusion, please make sure you prepare a few heart protection pills." "Oh." Sun Tong's eyes narrowed slightly, watching Changqing with growing interest. "What makes you say that?" "Sometimes, the smallest preparations can mean the difference between life and death," Changqing replied, voice steady. "I advise caution. That's all." Chuckling, Sun Tong waved his hand dismissively. "Relax, young one. I always carry one with me for emergencies." He reached into his storage pouch and retrieved a smooth, white jade bottle. Yet, the moment he opened it, his expression changed. The bottle was empty. A chilling silence fell. His hand trembled ever so slightly as he stared into the vacant container. Used up without noticing, he muttered, his voice suddenly hoarse. If I hadn't checked. A cold sweat broke out along his spine. Had he discovered this too late, mid-breakthrough, there would have been no saving him. Elder son, looks like it's time to replenish your supply, Gu Changqing said lightly, the corners of his lips lifting in a subtle reminder. Sun Tong looked up, eyes filled with unspoken gratitude. Today's reminder may have saved my life. I won't forget it. Gu Changqing said nothing more. Whether Sun Tong would truly heed the warning was up to fate. With a respectful bow, Gu Changqing stepped down from the stone platform. If there's nothing else, Elder, I'll take my leave. Sun Tong watched him go, a thoughtful smile forming on his face. You're always full of surprises, boy. He didn't stop him. Gu Changqing returned the gesture with a fist salute. Until we meet again. And with that, he vanished, his body dissolving in a shadow as he darted into the forest like a whisper. He didn't dare linger. After all, 2 disciples of the 7 Xuanwu Palace had met their end by his hand within the secret realm. Sooner or later, someone would come asking questions. The best plan now was escape. From the edge of the clearing, Sun Tong watched his silhouette disappear into the trees. A true dragon can't be caged forever, he murmured, stroking his beard. Even the 7 Xuanwu mansion will not be enough to hold him. Deep in the forest, Gu Changqing soared through the undergrowth, stepping from shadow to shadow. Once he was far from the core area, a green blur burst into the sky beside him. The ghost moth had transformed into a majestic wind eagle. With one leap, Gu Changqing landed on its back. In a flash, the beast beat its wings and shot toward the skies, trailing after images as it surged toward the imperial capital of the Daong dynasty. Back at the Tianyan Mountains central platform, the air shimmered as figures began teleporting out of the secret realm. Ha ha! What a haul! We barely scratched the surface. If we had more time, we could have gathered even more herbs. Huh? Why was the area I searched completely stripped bare? Cheers and chatter filled the air. Many disciples wore wide grins, their faces beaming with pride and success. But among them, several wore only frowns and confusion, those assigned to the areas devastated by the tiger bees. Silence. A sharp voice broke the noise. The leading deacon scanned the crowd. Form ranks. Begin the head count. The chatter died instantly. Soon, the deacon walked up to Sun Tong and bowed. Elder, the entrance is closed. 3 disciples have not returned. Sun Tong's gaze darkened. Names. Lin Shun, Chen Yun, Su Hongkai. The names rang out across the clearing and struck like thunder. What? Senior brother Lin is dead? Disbelief rippled through the crowd. Lin Shun, once hailed as a rising star of the 7 Xuanwu mansion, had fallen? He had reached the Yuan Dan realm in just 3 years, a dazzling prodigy. No one had expected his light to be extinguished so soon. If senior brother Lin is gone, we'll be missing a key fighter in the martial assembly. Yeah, the 7 Xuanwu mansion has held the championship for 5 straight years. What now? The conversations quickly shifted from shock to worry about the future. Sun Tong closed his eyes briefly and sighed. Life and death are constant companions in the martial path. If they did not return, then it was their fate. He raised his sleeve. A spirit boat emerged in a flicker of light. The group boarded in silence. Moments later, the vessel trembled, transformed into a streak of emerald, and vanished into the sky. Sun Tong stood at the prow, his expression unreadable, hands clasped behind his back as he stared into the clouds ahead. It seems, he murmured, in the coming martial assembly, our hopes rest entirely on him. When night fell, Gu Changqing had already arrived at the imperial capital. He walked slowly through the towering city gate and looked at the bustling streets in front of him, but there was no trace of emotion in his eyes. Relying on Lin Chen's memories of his previous life, he knew very well that in half a month, the current emperor would pass away and crown Prince Chu Jingyan would successfully succeed to the throne. In order to consolidate his throne, The new emperor will certainly massacre the court and eliminate dissidents. By then, this bustling street will be littered with corpses. But the most ironic thing is that the one who really controls the power is not Xu Jingyan himself, but Wu Xiao, who has been hiding behind the scenes. That old B************ D used some kind of evil magic to turn Xu Jingyan into a puppet and secretly controlled the entire Daong dynasty. He even manipulated Xu Jingyan to send hundreds of thousands of troops to besiege the 7 profound martial palaces, resulting in heavy casualties on both sides and alarming the entire martial arts community. After all, the imperial dynasty and the military power have always kept to themselves. After a thorough investigation, the Martial Arts Alliance finally uncovered Wu Xiao, a remnant of the Blood Evil sect. However, it was too late. The Great Yong dynasty eventually fell apart and was gradually eroded and annexed by neighboring countries, eventually going to complete destruction. This ending is not what I want. Gu Changqing's eyes darkened, and he thought to himself, once the Daong dynasty collapses, the first to suffer will be the Tianji Pavilion's intelligence network. Moreover, that madman Wu Xiao will never tolerate the existence of the Tianji Pavilion. The only way to break the impasse now is to prevent the crown prince from ascending the throne and instead support the 6th prince to take the throne. In this way, the original trajectory can be changed. But for now, we have to solve the troubles around the 6th prince, Chu Linyuan, first. Through Lin Chen's memories of his previous life, we learned that Chu Linyuan was betrayed by his close confidants before the old emperor passed away. Although his life was not in danger, he was demoted to a commoner and eventually had to seek refuge in the 7 Xuanwu mansion and become an inner sect disciple. However, the information Lin Chen had was limited to the surface, and he was not sure which confidant had betrayed Chu Linyuan. Although time is tight, there is still time for everything. Gu Changqing's eyes narrowed slightly, and he had a plan in mind. Afterwards, he returned to Ziyun Pavilion and immediately summoned Fang Baiyu, Zhao Rong, and Meng Jing. Boss, your cultivation has reached a breakthrough again. On the top floor of the pavilion, Fang Baiyu stared at Gu Changqing in disbelief with his eyes wide open. It's been such a short time since we last met, yet he has already broken through to the Yuandan realm. Looking at the entire Songyuan continent, even those legendary geniuses would probably find it difficult to achieve such a terrifying speed of cultivation. It was just a coincidence. Gu Changqing smiled calmly, took out 3 blood spirit pills, and handed them to the 3 of them. These blood spirit pills should be able to help you break through the bottleneck. Blood spirit pill. Zhao Rong reached out to take it, and immediately felt the pure spiritual power and rich blood contained in the pill. This is good stuff. Fang Baiyu obviously had a lot of knowledge, and said excitedly, if I can refine and absorb it, I will definitely be able to break through to the Dao Fan realm. Meng Jing, who was always calm, couldn't help but hold his breath and carefully put away the pill. Thank you, boss. Fang Baiyu and the other 2 looked at each other, their excitement evident in words. Looking back, they were still struggling for food and clothing in the slums, but now, not only have they escaped from their predicament, but they can also obtain such precious cultivation resources. With all this, why would we still need to look for opportunities to practice martial arts? As long as you follow your boss loyally, it will be a great opportunity. Have you planted any secret agents in Chu Linyuan's mansion? Gu Changqing turned his gaze to Fang Baiyu and asked. Fang Baiyu immediately responded, there are 3 people, but they are all responsible for odd jobs. Tell them to keep a close eye on the recent movements of the people around Chu Linyuan. If there are any suspects, report them immediately. Gu Changqing gave an order, and then added, also, secretly send someone to inform Chu Linyuan to beware of his close associates and tell him that someone is trying to frame him recently. Okay, I'll do it right away. Fang Baiyu nodded seriously and immediately turned and left. Jing, has that old man in black robe come again? Gu Changqing turned his head and his eyes fell on Meng Jing. The last time I told him you hadn't shown up since you went into seclusion for training. Meng Jing shook his head and whispered, remember, If he comes again, refuse to see him as usual. When Gu Changqing said this, there was inevitably a hint of solemnity in his tone. After all, with that old D's cultivation level, he wasn't someone he could fight head-on. Unless we use the blood spirit puppet to create new Zerg monsters, we may still be able to compete with the opponent. Boss, the remuneration for the illegal work undertaken by Tianji Pavilion some time ago has been fully collected. Zhao Rong reported respectfully. I exchanged all the rewards for high-quality spirit stones, a total of more than 3,000 pieces. As soon as he finished speaking, he took out 3 heavy boxes from his storage ring. More than 3,000? Gu Changqing's eyes flashed. So many. If this amount is converted into energy value, it would be a full 300,000 points. Thinking back to the time, he worked so hard all by himself, but only earned that little profit. Now, with so many assassins in Tianji Pavilion, the speed at which he made money was completely beyond his expectations. As expected, there is still strength in numbers. Gu Changqing pursed his lips slightly and couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Afterwards, he collected 2 boxes of spirit stones and asked Zhao Rong to distribute the remaining box to the killer members of Tianji Pavilion. Although those people have received the corresponding task rewards, only when everyone makes money can a better virtuous cycle be maintained. More importantly, once this box of spirit stones is distributed, it will surely be exchanged for 10 or 100 times more loyalty and dedication. Boss, the influence of our Tianji Pavilion has now spread throughout the black market of the Great Yong Dynasty. Are you considering expanding outward? Zhao Rong said seriously. If we want to expand, there will be a shortage of assassins in the cabinet, and we need to recruit more people immediately. He knew very well that Gu Changqing's ambition was far more than that. As long as the boss wants to do something, I will do my best. Gu Changqing pondered for a moment, then shook his head and said, No hurry. Let's stabilize the foundation first. As long as we can stabilize the current situation, then it will be time for us to show our strength. I understand. Zhao Rong lowered her head and responded, a glimmer of understanding in her eyes. After Zhao Rong and Meng Jing left, Gu Changqing sat on the chair and began to plan his own affairs. As the editing material for the blood spirit puppet, a suitable Zerg body must be selected. The strength of the species is not the key. The key is that the selected Zerg must be able to perfectly match the blood spirit puppet in order to stimulate its greatest potential. This is a bit difficult to decide. System, open the pet panel. Gu Changqing's mind moved slightly, and a translucent holographic interface was immediately projected in front of his eyes. On the pale blue light screen, 5 Zerg totems were arranged neatly, flickering faintly. Their initial forms are Spider, Hornet, Mantis, Ghost Moth, and Rhinoceros Beetle, respectively. According to the system settings, once a Zerg species has been created, it is no longer possible to capture the same Zerg species for editing. In other words, the 6th Zerg monster must collect new species. Everyone, don't be silent. Come out and give some suggestions. As soon as Gu Changqing finished speaking, 5 insect shadows flashed out. Master, is there any need to think about this? Of course, a centipede or a scorpion would be the most suitable. Tigerbee grinned. The combat power of these 2 Zerg species is definitely strong enough. If you want them now, I'll go catch a few right away. Gu Changqing heard this and thought to himself, these 2 types of Zerg are indeed impeccable in terms of toxicity, aggressiveness, and shell defense. But if I want to edit and merge it with the blood spirit puppet, I always feel that there is some mismatch. Master, I think it might be more appropriate to choose mosquitoes. At this moment, Shadow Spider suddenly made a suggestion. Oh, Gu Changqing raised his eyebrows slightly and motioned for it to continue. Among the Zerg, mosquitoes are weak, but after being edited and strengthened, they can also achieve extraordinary transformation like us. Shadow Spider's eyes wandered as he said leisurely, more importantly, it can perfectly match the characteristics of the blood spirit puppet, the blood evil spirit. If we edit and fuse the 2, we will most likely create a monster that sucks the enemy's blood. Hearing this, Changqing's eyes flashed. Mosquitoes. He changed his mind and felt that Shadow Spider's suggestion was a good one. After all, the original intention of forming this Zerg team was to carry out assassination missions. And aren't the mosquitoes' natural stealth and lethality a perfect match for assassination operations? Tiger Bee, go catch one. Okay. Before Changqing could finish his words, the Tiger Bee had already transformed into a black shadow and shot out from the window. Judging from its impatient look, it was probably acting on its own initiative and planning to catch a female mosquito for him. However, the Blood Spirit puppet is a specially made killing weapon with ferocious characteristics. If the female mosquito is chosen as the fusion object, it may be difficult to show the kind of violent and bloody aura. Thinking of this, Changqing immediately sent a voice message and ordered, "Remember, you must catch a male." When the Tiger Bee received this order, the whole insect was stunned. Their current Zerg team consists of 3 males and 2 females, and the gender ratio is already somewhat unbalanced. Wouldn't it be perfect if we could catch another female, so that we can make a 3-to-3 group and occasionally try to swap partners? But now the owner wants to catch a male mosquito. What does this mean? This means that the already large number of monks and small amount of meat will face even more intense competition. Of course, no matter how puzzled it was, it didn't dare to disobey the order and could only wander around in the night, full of complaints. I don't know what this guy is thinking about. Changqing shook his head and chuckled. It was really hard to describe the temperament of the Tiger Bee. It's just a bee brain, full of nonsense. Thanos curled his lips and recalled the embarrassing experience of being dragged back by Tiger Bee last time. I wonder which male mosquito will suffer this time. Thinking of this, the corners of Thanos' mouth slowly rose, but there was a sense of gloating. I'm coming too. Soon, accompanied by a burst of rapid flapping wings, the Tiger Bee rushed back in a hurry. I saw a mosquito struggling under its claws. "Master, don't worry. I have checked it carefully. It is definitely a male." Tiger Bee grinned and waved his trophy proudly. As it spoke, it swung its claws violently, and the unfortunate mosquito was smashed to the ground, staggering dizzy on the spot. Bite! Congratulations to the host for capturing a mosquito, which meets the criteria for inclusion in the Zerg Atlas. Do you want to collect it? As Changqing picked up the dizzy mosquito with his fingers, the system's electronic chorus sounded. Yes. Changqing recited silently without hesitation. As soon as he finished speaking, the mosquito disappeared instantly. Storage successful. Congratulations to the host for gathering all the required materials. Would you like to edit it? Changqing looked at the editing panel that appeared in front of him and immediately clicked to confirm the operation. Ding! The command has been completed. After system scanning, the editing material is a high-level blood spirit puppet with residual consciousness in the body, which requires 500,000 energy points. Current energy value, 176,500 points. Insufficient energy detected. Operation terminated. Hearing this reminder, Changqing's heart skipped a beat. 500,000, that's a lot. His Adam's apple rolled, and he took a slow, deep breath. This amount is a considerable expense. Without hesitation, Changqing immediately took out 2 boxes of top-grade spirit stones from his storage ring. Ding, conversion successful. Current energy value, 388,000. As the system prompt sounded, 2 boxes of crystal-clear spirit stones turned into streams of light and disappeared in an instant. However, it was clearly far from 500,000. Oh, and there are spiritual plants. Changqing's mind moved, and he took out all the spiritual plants collected from the secret realm. He was too lazy to calculate carefully, so he simply converted it all into energy. Whoosh! The next moment, all the spiritual energy was instantly drained from all the spiritual plants, and they were turned into powder on the spot. The energy value on the system interface suddenly soared to 580,000. Finally, it's all together. Changqing pursed his lips slightly, and a hint of relief flashed in his eyes. In just one instant, his family fortune was wiped out again. Ding! The host's energy value is detected to be sufficient. Do you want to continue editing? Yes. Changqing responded immediately, staring expectantly at the light screen panel in front of him. Buzz! As the panel flickered, the three materials in the groove, human blood, mosquitoes, and blood spirit puppets, instantly merged together. Congratulations on completing the operation. Successfully extracted the characteristics of the blood spirit puppet. The monster is beginning to be edited. Ding! Editing successful. Congratulations to the host for creating the 6th Zerg monster. Please give it a name. Blood Spirit. Just as Changqing finished naming, a brand new pet panel suddenly appeared. Blood Spirit. Sequence 006. Level Lord. Combat Power Assessment. Zerg form is comparable to human warriors in the Xianin realm, can be trained independently. Attack skills, Blood Seal, Blood Rage. Auxiliary skills, Miss Sneak Attack. Innate abilities, can evolve into a bloodthirsty being and can transform into a humanoid monster. Looking at the data information displayed on the panel, Changqing's pupils suddenly shrank and his eyes were fixed on the level of the blood spirit. Lord level. He was stunned for several breaths before gradually coming to his senses, and an expression of irrepressible ecstasy appeared on his face. No wonder it requires such a huge amount of energy. This grade alone is worth the money. In other words, as soon as the blood spirit was born, it became the leader of the Zerg army. Changqing turned his eyes and focused on the skill information on the panel. Blood Seal. Effect. Can condense 3 evil seals to devour the enemy's essence and blood. Features. The richer the blood energy absorbed, the more evil seals can be condensed. Blood Rage. Effect. After activation, you will instantly enter a blood rage state, violent and ferocious. Features. Combat power can increase several times. Not bad. Changqing's eyes flickered slightly, and then he moved his gaze downward to look at the auxiliary skill, Mist Sneak Attack. Form transformation. The body can be decomposed into blood mist. Tactical characteristics, suitable for rapid raids. Defensive advantage. Immune to all physical attacks in atomized state. After reading all the skill information, Changqing's eyes lit up. No matter which skill it is extremely practical in combat. Blood Spirit, come out and meet everyone. As soon as Changqing gave the order, a scarlet blood shadow suddenly flashed out. The moment the blood spirit appeared, a violent, bloody aura suddenly filled the surroundings. The shadow spiders all took a half step back at the same time, as if they felt the pressure from the Lord class. Changqing's eyes focused, and he saw that the blood spirit had completely transformed into a humanoid monster. The sturdy body has clear muscle lines and is covered with dark red lines. The pair of blood wings behind it are extremely ferocious, and bloody, evil energy can be seen flowing under the skin. Its face was covered entirely by a blood-patterned mask, which obviously inherited the appearance characteristics of the blood spirit puppet. Although you can't see the structure of the mouth and nose, it gives people a strange sense of mystery. I thought it had a long pointed mouth part, but this shape is even cooler than mine. The tiger bee looked around the blood spirit and curled its lips secretly. Yes, that's exactly the type I like. As the ghost moth's beautiful eyes moved, a charming smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. What? The tiger bee was stunned. I have muscles and wings. Isn't it just an extra mask? It immediately stood beside the blood spirit and kept comparing it. The blood spirit slowly turned his head, his scarlet pupils fixed directly on Tiger Bee, with a terrifying, bloodthirsty, murderous intent surging in his eyes. The moment the Tiger Bee was locked by those blood-red eyes, its shell suddenly tensed up and a strong sense of crisis surged in its heart. Haha, just a joke. Tiger Bee subconsciously took 2 steps back and said with a flattering smile, "Brother, your mask is really cool. Can you lend it to me someday?" As soon as these words were spoken, the air suddenly became quiet. "Can." There was a chill in the blood spirit's deep voice, "But I have to pay with your blood." As he spoke, the bloodthirstiness in his eyes grew stronger. He immediately raised his slender paws, and, as blood filled the air, 3 bloody seals suddenly condensed and slowly lingered on his fingertips. "Oh my God, are you serious?" The tiger bee suddenly widened its eyes and immediately swung its stinger as if facing a formidable enemy, getting into a fighting stance. "Stop!" Changqing gave a faint order. Upon hearing the master's order, the tiger bee and the blood spirit immediately restrained their breath and lowered their heads respectfully. Changqing looked at the 2 Zergs bowing their heads in front of him and couldn't help but feel secretly relieved. Fortunately, the loyalty of pets created by the system is set to 100%. If I didn't have this guarantee, I might not be able to suppress these dangerous guys with my current strength. Blood Spirit, how confident are you in facing a human warrior at the peak of the Xinjiang realm? Changqing turned his gaze to Xueling and asked curiously. If you activate the blood rage state, you can hold the opponent back. The blood spirit responded respectfully, then glanced at the shadow spiders and said in a low voice, "If we attack together, we should have a 60% chance of winning." 60%. Hearing this result, Changqing nodded slightly, with a hint of satisfaction appearing at the corner of his mouth. Although the chances of winning are not high, it is a world of difference compared to the previous predicament of being unable to fight back. Now, with the powerful blood spirit puppet in charge, even if we meet that old villain again, we will finally have the confidence to fight him head-on. Changqing raised his hand and waved, and the 6 Zergs were instantly collected into the system space. Then, he turned and walked into the secret room, sat cross-legged, and began to practice breathing exercises. This trip to the secret realm, although he relied on the efficacy of the cold marrow fruit to break through to a new realm in one fell swoop. However, Changqing knew very well that this kind of cultivation that relied on external objects to forcibly improve was ultimately not stable enough. If the foundation is not consolidated early, it will inevitably affect performance in the future. He immediately sat cross-legged in meditation, and his mind instantly sank into his dantian. In the center of the vast sea of caves, there was a fire seed of Xinjiang tyrant body and a Yuan Dan of his own cultivation level suspended. Because it was tempered by the energy of the cold marrow fruit, the surface of the Yuan Dan was covered with frost patterns and filled with a cold air. But because the energies of ice and fire repel each other, what he needs to do now is to completely consolidate these 2 energies. As his mind changed, Changqing began to mobilize energy to circulate through the meridians throughout his body, allowing it to gradually be accepted and returned to his body. 5 days passed in a flash. Bang! When night fell, a muffled sound suddenly came from the secret room on the top floor of Ziyun Pavilion. Changqing suddenly opened his eyes, and a gleam of light flashed in his pupils. The fluctuations of true energy emanating from his body at this moment were obviously more condensed and powerful than before. Whoosh! Whoosh! Changqing raised his hand slightly, and 2 completely different energy vortices suddenly appeared in the palms of his hands. The left palm is surging with red flames, and the right palm is surging with cold currents. One ice and the other fire, 2 completely opposite true energies, were perfectly balanced in his palm, complementing each other. If they're superimposed, what will be the effect? Changqing's eyes flashed, and he suddenly had an idea. As the thought came to his mind, he slowly closed his hands together. The moment the 2 energies with different properties merged in his palms, a Tai Chi vortex was formed. The temperature inside the secret room suddenly changed into a strange state of hot and cold. Melt! Changqing's eyes flashed, and when he forcibly compressed the 2 energies to the size of a walnut, something strange happened suddenly. Boom! A low gas explosion sounded suddenly in the secret room. Under the impact of this energy aftermath, the isolating light curtain suddenly shook violently and collapsed completely. However, Changqing was surprised to find that the ball of ice and fire that was forcibly compressed did not dissipate. The 2 completely opposite energies actually merged perfectly together at this moment, suspended in his palm and slowly rotating. The red and blue light flickered, like a miniature star containing a heart-pounding energy fluctuation. It's done. Changqing looked at the ball of red and blue light floating in his palm, unable to hide the excitement on his face. Unexpectedly, by accident, I created a move that is unique to me. However, the fluctuations of this energy body are too violent. If its power is tested here, the entire Ziyun pavilion will probably collapse on the spot. Changqing took a deep breath, slowly closed his palms, and suppressed the urge to try. As he moved, the violent energy gradually subsided and finally dissipated in his palm. Frost fire explosion. As soon as Changqing had this thought, the storage ring suddenly vibrated slightly. Immediately afterwards, a sound transmission note suddenly flew out and quickly burned up. In the firelight, Meng Jing's voice immediately rang out. "Boss, the sixth prince needs to meet you urgently." On the top floor of the pavilion in the hall, Changqing was sitting in the main seat at this moment, brewing tea slowly and leisurely. Squeak! At this time, the door was pushed open, and Meng Jing led Chu Linyuan into the hall. "Boss, the sixth prince has arrived." After Meng Jing respectfully reported, he turned and left, closing the hall door behind him. "What's the matter? Have some tea first, and then we can talk." Changqing raised his eyes and smiled faintly, motioning Chu Linyuan to take a seat. I saw him holding the teapot with smooth movements, and the tea drew an arc and fell into the cup accurately. Brother Gu is really in a refined mood. Chu Linyuan laughed loudly and sat down opposite. As soon as he sat down, the ancient ring on his left hand suddenly flashed. Then a hoarse voice sounded in his mind. "It's been more than 10 days since I last saw you, but your cultivation has improved a lot." Chu Linyuan's eyes flashed with surprise, and he thought to himself, what realm is he at now? The early stage of Yuandan realm. Shirlao's voice was full of appreciation. Although he has just broken through, his aura is as solid as a rock, and his foundation is solid. With such a fast cultivation speed, he must have gained some kind of opportunity. Hearing this, Chu Linyuan picked up the teacup calmly, and couldn't help but glance at Changqing opposite him from the corner of his eye. If this boy truly assists you, your fight for the throne will surely be twice as successful with half the effort. Mr. Shi spoke slowly and meaningfully, and then said no more. Chu Linyuan nodded secretly and did not refute out loud. After this period of contact, the impression Changqing gave him was that he was definitely not an ordinary person. "Ow!" Changqing put down the teacup and suddenly asked, "Good tea?" Chu Linyuan was about to say something, but he sensed the hidden meaning behind Changqing's words and immediately said solemnly, "Thanks to Brother Gu for sending someone to remind me. I have already found the spy." Changqing smiled faintly and said, "That's great." As a result, the original destiny of the sixth prince finally deviated. But to truly reverse the situation, we have to eradicate the source completely. And the source was none other than Crown Prince Chu Jingyan and Wu Xiao. I never thought the prince was so cunning and scheming that he could plant secret agents around me one after another. Chu Linyuan frowned, his face sullen. If it weren't for Brother Gu's help this time, I'm afraid I would have been stripped of my status as a prince. "Oh!" Changqing raised the corner of his mouth and asked curiously, "It seems that the prince's move this time is quite unusual." A hint of coldness flashed across Chu Linyuan's eyes. "It's more than unusual. It's obvious that he wants to kill me and ruin my reputation. That spy is the chief steward of my palace. Last night, he cooperated with the crown prince of the Eastern Palace to knock concubine Yang unconscious and send her to my bedroom. If the charge of defilement in the imperial palace is proven true." At this point, Chu Linyuan suddenly sneered. It's a pity that the prince had planned everything, but he didn't expect that I had been prepared. I just used a little trick to send Yang Guifei to the bed of his trusted confidant, Commander Wang. According to the time, Commander Wang should have been arrested by the Ministry of Justice by now. I will then have the opportunity to take advantage of the situation and arrange for my own people to take the position. Gu Changqing's eyes suddenly focused as he looked at the sinister smile on Chu Linyuan's lips, thinking secretly in his heart. It seems that the sixth prince, although seemingly unruly on the surface, is actually a ruthless character hidden deep inside when it comes to his tactics. But this is better. If he didn't have such cunning and scheming, it would be difficult to achieve anything great even with my secret support. The struggle for imperial power is no joke. Your Highness the Sixth Prince used this technique of transplanting flowers and trees skillfully. Gu Changqing smiled calmly. But the prince has suffered such a huge loss, I'm sure he won't let it go. Chu Linyuan's eyes flashed coldly, and he said solemnly, he and I have long been in a situation of life and death, so this one more thing doesn't matter. He paused and changed the subject. As for what Brother Gu promised last time, when can we start? There's no rush for this. Gu Changqing took a sip of tea and looked at Chu Linyuan meaningfully. Why don't you tell me first, what will you rely on to stabilize the government by then? Chu Linyuan was silent for a moment, then slowly said, now that my father is critically ill and the crown prince is still alive, no one has a hope of becoming the heir, including me. If something unexpected happens to the crown prince, the various factions in the court will surely take advantage of the opportunity to rise up. He raised his eyes and looked directly at Gu Changqing, his gaze as sharp as a torch. Only by obtaining the Tiger Talisman can we shock the government and the public and control the overall situation. Tiger Talisman. Gu Changqing raised the corners of his lips slightly. This was exactly the answer he wanted. The Tiger Talisman has always been divided into two parts. It can be used to mobilize the border troops. Chu Linyuan obviously didn't know what Gu Changqing was planning and continued. My father and Duke Yang each hold half. In order to protect himself, Duke Yang had always given the Tiger Talisman to his son Yang Zhao to bring into the Seven Xuanwu Palace. Unfortunately, after Yang Zhao was assassinated in Wu Mansion, the half-Tiger Talisman disappeared. Upon hearing this, Gu Changqing raised a barely perceptible smile. The military talisman was now lying safely in his system space. Unless he hands it over willingly, no one can get it. If I can find the Tiger Talisman for you, what will you be willing to pay? Gu Changqing asked tentatively with a smile. Chu Linyuan's face suddenly changed, and he stared at Gu Changqing with suspicion. Brother Gu, do you know the whereabouts of the Tiger Talisman? Gu Changqing said non-committally. I have some connections in the black market. It shouldn't be difficult to find out his whereabouts. Chu Linyuan's eyes lit up. If you can find it, I will reward you handsomely. Gu Changqing shook his head and smiled. Talking about money hurts feelings. Let's talk about something else. Chu Linyuan was stunned when he heard this and looked at him with confusion, unable to figure out the meaning. Don't think about it. This guy is negotiating terms with you. At this time, Shi Lao's voice sounded in his mind. He must know the whereabouts of the Tiger Talisman. After hearing this, Chu Linyuan immediately understood. I wonder what Brother Gu wants specifically. Since it involved interest, his tone was obviously more cautious. It's simple. A piece of territory. Gu Changqing curled the corners of his lips slightly. Then he raised his hand, and a map emerged from the storage ring. Chu Linyuan's eyes focused, and what came into view was the entire territory of the Great Yong Dynasty. This action seemed to have been prepared in advance. Opening a shop and doing business means working hard for a lifetime. Gu Changqing smiled slightly. If I could become a lord, I wouldn't have to worry about anything. As he spoke, his fingertips landed steadily on the northern border area of the map. It was a vast and desolate territory, the Northern Wasteland. Although the location is remote, this is exactly the best location in Gu Changqing's mind. This is because the ruins of the blood evil sect that was destroyed by the Martial Arts Alliance that year is located in the northern wilderness. Although the spiritual veins, protective formations, and buildings there have been completely destroyed, the overall scale still remains. At that time, with just a slight renovation, the Tianji Pavilion can be moved in and truly achieve the goal of establishing a new sect. Northern Wasteland? Chu Linyuan stared at where Gu Changqing pointed. a hint of surprise flashing across his brows. "It's right here." Gu Changqing smiled faintly and nodded. "It looks like this is the biggest one. Although this place is large, it is barren and desolate. It is often invaded by barbarians. Even the imperial garrison can hardly stay for long." Chu Linyuan stared at Gu Changqing in confusion and asked, "Why did Brother Gu choose this place?" Gu Changqing raised his eyes and looked directly at the other person, saying meaningfully, "It is because no one cares that it is worth operating. If His Highness the Sixth Prince ascends the throne, the barbarians in the northern border will become a serious threat. And if I can guard this place for you, I can not only share your worries, but also enjoy the results. Isn't that the best of both worlds?" Chu Linyuan's eyes were deep as he weighed the pros and cons in his mind. This boy has great ambitions. Shi Lao's voice sounded again. "Although the northern wasteland is barren, if it can be managed properly, it may not be impossible to achieve hegemony. In my opinion, he wants to use your power to establish his own foundation." Chu Linyuan hesitated for a moment and thought to himself, "It doesn't matter. As long as he can really help me ascend to the throne, what's wrong with giving him a piece of wasteland? What's more, the crown prince's power in the court is now as solid as a rock. It's hard to say whether he can be overthrown. At present, this verbal promise will not lose anything at all." After hearing this, Mr. Shi felt that it made a lot of sense. After all, the current situation is unclear, and this verbal agreement will not harm one's own interests at all. Even if it succeeds by then, both parties will naturally be winners. Since Brother Gu has this intention, I will certainly fulfill it. Chu Linyuan looked at Gu Changqing with deep eyes and said slowly, "But are you sure about the tiger talisman?" Gu Changqing looked calm and said calmly, "If Your Highness the Sixth Prince agrees to my conditions, when the crown prince dies suddenly, the tiger talisman will naturally fall into your hands." "Good." Chu Linyuan took a deep breath and said resolutely, "As long as Brother Gu can help me seize the throne, the northern wasteland will belong to you. I swear in the name of the royal family." Gu Changqing nodded with satisfaction. "In that case, happy cooperation." After saying this, he picked up the teacup, took a sip, and a deep light flashed in his eyes. The northern wasteland was just the first step in his plan. The real chess game has just begun. If Chu Linyuan keeps his promise, everyone will be happy and get what they want. If you betray him, he will never show any mercy. After Chu Linyuan left Ziyun Pavilion, he walked straight towards the luxurious carriage parked on the street. As soon as he stepped into the carriage, he casually lit a talisman. As the light flashed, an invisible, isolating light curtain instantly enveloped the entire carriage. The next moment, the remaining soul of Old Shi emerged from the carriage and transformed into an old man in a gray robe with white hair and beard. "You just said that Gu Changqing asked for the territory because he wanted to establish his own foundation?" Chu Linyuan looked at Mr. Shi in front of him and couldn't help asking, "Is there any unknown background behind him? This person's behavior is really weird, and I can't figure out his true intentions." Shi Lao's tone was a little deep, but this boy must have a big secret. There was a brief silence in the carriage. "Will it be?" Chu Linyuan suddenly lowered his voice. "Does he also have a residual soul, like yours in secret?" "Impossible," Old Shi said firmly. "I've already secretly investigated and found that this boy does not have the aura of other old monsters, but I vaguely felt that there was a fluctuation of spirit within him, as if he was hiding an extraordinary treasure." Chu Linyuan pondered for a moment, obviously not interested in this, and then changed the subject. "Do you think he can really get the tiger talisman?" Old Shi took a deep look at Chu Linyuan and said in a deep voice, "Linyuan, if you play tricks, you are obviously not Gu Changqing's opponent." "What do you mean?" Chu Linyuan frowned slightly, and a hint of doubt flashed in his eyes. Shi Lao shook his head. "What he said just now clearly implies that the tiger talisman is in his hand." "What?" Chu Linyuan's eyes suddenly widened, and he asked in confusion, "Then why didn't he just give it to me?" "Innocent." Shi Lao's face darkened. How could he hand over the chips in his hand before the matter is accomplished? Since this boy dares to hint like this, he must have something to rely on. As he spoke, his old voice was faintly eerie. But this is actually a good thing for you. The stronger he is, the greater the chance of overthrowing the crown prince. Chu Lingyuan's eyes sparkled. Then, according to your opinion, Old Shi said solemnly, word by word, this boy should only be a close friend, not an enemy. Otherwise, the price you will pay in the future will be beyond your ability to bear. Chu Linyuan nodded solemnly. Brother Gu has helped me so much. I will not betray him. That's great. Old Shi smiled with relief, and without saying anything more, he turned into a ray of green light and flew into the ancient ring. The top floor of Zuyun Pavilion. Gu Changqing was standing by the window at this moment, staring calmly at the carriage moving away in the night. Then he narrowed his gaze and turned to look at the entrance of the secret passage in the inner room. Buzz! The wall slowly opened and a figure walked out. It was Fang Baiyu. Boss, detailed information about Crown Prince Chu Jingyan has been collected. Fang Baiyu took out a piece of paper from his storage ring and presented it respectfully. Gu Changqing reached out to take it, and his eyes fell on the contents on the paper. Pray, Chu Jingyan. Age, 25. Identity, the current crown prince of the Great Yong Dynasty. Strength, at the peak of Yuandan realm. Practicing swordsmanship, suspected of having a hidden card. Amulet, wearing a Xianyang heart protecting jade, can resist fatal blows. Movement pattern, he goes to the secret room to practice at midnight every night. He follows a fixed route, passing through the corridor on the west side of the Imperial Garden, and only brings 8 guards with him. East Palace deployment. 12 masters are hidden in the palace. All of them are in the late Xianin realm, and there are formations to protect them. Recent trends, unknown. After reading all the information, Gu Changqing frowned slightly, and a trace of solemnity flashed in his eyes. According to the analysis of the intelligence currently available, the prince's defense capabilities are undoubtedly quite tricky. Boss, are you still investigating? Fang Baiyu noticed the change in Gu Changqing's expression and asked in a low voice. No need. Tell the entire Dark Blade team to stand by. Gu Changqing's eyes darkened slightly, and he said coldly, once you receive my order, immediately eliminate all officials of the Crown Prince's faction. Yes, sir. Fang Baiyu's expression changed, and he immediately took the order and left. The hall suddenly fell into silence. Gu Changqing stared at the night outside the window with a deep gaze, constantly deducing various strategies in his mind. The defense capabilities of the Imperial Palace do not seem to be as strict as those of the 7 Xuanwu palaces, and they are not as numerous as the experts. But the last time he was able to successfully assassinate the inner disciple Yang Zhao, it was largely because he was not a key protected person in the Wu Mansion, so he had the opportunity to take advantage of it. On the other hand, the situation of Crown Prince Chu Jingyan is completely different. As the Crown Prince, he is surrounded by the most elite defense forces in the entire palace. Apart from the Emperor himself, almost all the defense forces in the Imperial City were focused on protecting His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. It is not so easy to take his life without anyone noticing. What's even more troublesome is that Wu Xiao is hiding beside Chu Jingyan. The old D's mental power is extremely strong and sharp, and he will be able to detect the slightest movement. Now that we have come to this, we have no choice but to burn our boats. Gu Changqing took a deep breath slowly, and his eyes gradually became cold. Now that the arrow is on the string, how can we turn back? According to Lin Chen's memories from his previous life, there are only 10 days left before the Emperor's death. On the top floor of Ziyun Pavilion, Gu Changqing stood in front of the window, staring in the direction of the Imperial City. The Crown Prince must be dealt with before the political situation changes. As he whispered to himself, he had already made up his mind. Although the assassination attempt on Crown Prince Chu Jingyan was extremely dangerous, it was not foolproof. And the key to all this lies in Wu Xiao. This person can be said to be the biggest obstacle to this operation. As long as he can be lured out of the prince's mansion, the Zerg killer group will have an opportunity to take advantage of it. But before taking action, you must make thorough preparations. If we have the aid of formations, we will be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort. Changqing's thoughts were racing in his mind, and a complete hunting plan gradually took shape. However, he was not proficient in the art of battle formations, and if he wanted to master it quickly, he had to rely on external forces. Ghost Moth set off for the 7 Xuanwu palaces. He called softly, "Whoosh!" As soon as he finished speaking, the ghost moth flew out of the window. Its body rapidly expanded, and in the blink of an eye it turned into a huge green-winged eagle, hovering above the pavilion. The shadow spider used shadow shuttle at the same time, and Changqing's figure disappeared instantly. The next moment, he was standing firmly on the eagle's back. "Call!" The ghost moth flapped its wings suddenly and flew up, leaving a blurry afterimage in the night sky, and rushed towards the direction of the Xuanwu Palace outside the city. The cold wind was howling. Changqing's eyes were calm, and his robes were rustling in the wind. Among the 7 Xuanwu palaces, the only person he could turn to for help was Sun Tong. After the last trip to the secret realm, Sun Tong returned home to practice in seclusion. I wonder what his current situation is like. If it had followed the original trajectory, it would have been a disastrous situation. Whoosh! In the night sky, the ghost moth flies at an astonishing speed, and every flap of its wings makes a sharp sound of breaking wind. When they arrived at the foot of the mountain of Xuanwu Mansion, Changqing put it back into the system space. He had just stepped onto the stone steps of the mountain gate and had not yet stood still when a surprised voice suddenly rang out. "You again!" At the mountain gate, the fat deacon in a black robe looked at Changqing, who was walking towards him with a complicated expression. The last time, Changqing defeated 2 inner disciples here in succession. Not only was he not punished, he was also taken by Elder Sun to the secret realm of Tianyin Mountains for training. This special treatment made him realize that the person in front of him was not just a registered disciple. "You don't want to visit Elder Sun again, do you?" The fat deacon looked at Changqing and asked in a strange tone. "Exactly." Changqing smiled calmly. "Please inform them." As he spoke, he took out a large piece of beast meat weighing about 10 pounds from his storage ring. "This is monster meat." The fat deacon's pupils shrank slightly, and he stared at the piece of meat intently. The meat was tender and fresh, with a faint blue sheen on the surface. A hint of chill seeped out of it, and there was also a faint fluctuation of spiritual energy. "Yes, this is the meat of the 7th-level monster, the frost-scaled ice python." Changqing nodded and chuckled. "I got it from hunting when I was training in the secret realm a few days ago." "What?" Upon hearing this, the fat deacon raised his voice unconsciously. "You can actually hunt down a 7th-level monster?" Changqing raised the corner of his mouth slightly and said seriously, "If you don't suspect anything, you may try it." The ice python was huge, weighing hundreds of pounds, and the piece in front of him was just a drop in the bucket. "Junior Brother this is so embarrassing." The fat deacon kept refusing, but his hands moved incredibly quickly. He just raised his fat palm in the air, and the piece of animal meat with a faint blue glow fell steadily into his palm. The moment it touched the piece of meat, a pure chill flowed through his pores into his meridians, causing him to shiver. The meat of a 7th-level monster. The fat butler swallowed secretly, his eyes flashing with excitement. How could the outer sect deacons like them normally have the privilege of enjoying such natural treasures? This small piece alone is equivalent to the nourishment of several mid-grade medicinal pills, and you can also enjoy delicious food at the same time. "Wait here for a moment. I'll have someone pass the message." After receiving the beast meat, the fat deacon's face was full of smiles. He immediately took out a sound transmission talisman and ignited it directly in his hand. Seeing this, Changqing smiled secretly in his heart. When you ask someone to do something for you when you are away from home, sometimes giving a little sweetness can be more effective than 1,000 words. No matter where you are, the so-called human relationships and social customs are obviously the same. Then, the light of the sound transmission note dissipated. The fat deacon turned around and said with a smile, "Elder son has already known. Someone will come to take you into the mansion soon." Changqing nodded slightly, feeling a little relieved. It seems that nothing unexpected has happened to Sun Tong so far. After a moment, the light curtain of the sect protection formation at the mountain gate suddenly began to ripple, and then a crack appeared. A middle-aged deacon in a black robe stepped out, his sleeves fluttering, revealing his extraordinary bearing. Changqing looked carefully and recognized that the person was the examiner of the last martial arts examination, Mo Tianqing. "Senior brother Mo." The fat deacon's expression froze, and he quickly bowed. He couldn't help but glance at Changqing from the corner of his eyes, and was secretly surprised in his heart. "I didn't expect this kid to have such a big face that Elder Son sent brother Mo to come and greet him in person." Mo Tianqing's deep gaze lingered on Changqing for a moment, and a relieved smile suddenly appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Changqing, you are very good." Hearing this, Changqing was slightly stunned, feeling a little puzzled by this sudden praise. "Elder Son has already told me about your experience in the secret realm." Mo Tianqing's eyes flashed with praise, and he laughed solemnly. "You can find such a rare treasure as the cold marrow fruit. You are truly extremely lucky. As for the matter of the heart protection pill, if you hadn't reminded Elder Son in time, the consequences would have been disastrous." Hearing this, Changqing's expression changed slightly. It seems that Elder Son is not only safe and sound, but also told Mo Tianqing everything about his trip to the secret realm. He humbly bowed and said, "Deacon Mo, you are too kind. It is just a coincidence." Mo Tianqing waved his hand, with a smile that carried some deep meaning. "In the martial arts world, luck and strength have always coexisted. You must have something extraordinary to have this opportunity. Let's go. Elder Son is waiting for you." After he finished speaking, he turned and walked into the mountain gate, with Changqing following closely behind him. When passing through the protective sect formation, he felt a powerful wave of spiritual energy sweeping through his body, but the formation did not repel him. Changqing couldn't help but feel a little yearning for this. If Tianji Pavilion wants to gain a firm foothold in the martial arts world, a protective formation is naturally an indispensable item for establishing a sect. But how could such a top-level formation be easily obtained? Changqing stared at the myriad patterns flowing in the formation. While he was secretly sighing, he felt more of a belief. If you don't have enough foundation, then use force to break through. Inside the 7 Xuanwu Palace, under the guidance of Mo Tianqing, Changqing walked up the bluestone steps, and the surrounding scenery gradually changed. The mountains are shrouded in clouds and mist, and the concentration of spiritual energy is obviously several times higher than that of the outside world. Along the way, disciples from the Wu Mansion passed by from time to time. When they saw Mo Tianqing, they all saluted and looked at Changqing curiously. "How is Elder Son these days?" Changqing asked tentatively. Mo Tianqing kept walking, but his tone became heavier. Since his retreat, Elder Son has been recuperating. If he hadn't prepared the heart-protecting pill in advance, I'm afraid. The words were not yet finished, but the meaning was already clear. Changqing nodded secretly. Fortunately, after the conflict with Lin Shun, he let the ghost moth forcibly plunder the other party's memory information, which gave him the ability to predict the future. But on second thought, this guy is really vicious. He was clearly reborn with the memories of his past life, and he knew that the elders of the mansion were going to face a life-and-death catastrophe, but he watched coldly. You know, Sun Tong is the elder who teaches martial arts in the 7 Xuanwu Mansion. Although he has a strict temperament on weekdays, he is also the mentor of all the disciples. With such a cold-hearted character, it's no wonder that he had no good ending in his past life or this life. Soon, the two came to a bamboo forest in the inner courtyard area. The breeze blows by, and the bamboo leaves rustle, which is indescribably elegant and refined. They followed the path deeper into the bamboo forest and saw a bamboo building standing at the end. Elder son is inside. Please go in on your own. Mo Tianqing stopped and smiled at Gu Changqing. After thanking him, Gu Changqing pushed open the gate, only to see a man sitting alone by the window of the bamboo building, brewing tea with a pot. The old man was Sun Tong. Come in if you're ready. The tea is just ready. Sun Tong's hoarse voice came from the bamboo building, revealing a bit of weakness from just recovering from an illness. When Gu Changqing pushed the door open, a refreshing scent of tea hit his face. He turned his eyes and saw Sun Tong sitting in front of the tea table. His face was a little pale, but he was in good spirits. Sit. Sun Tong motioned for Gu Changqing to take a seat and personally poured him a cup of tea. Try it. This is a magical tea brewed with Jinshin bamboo. Gu Changqing took the teacup and saw that the tea soup was a light green color and exuded a unique fragrance. He took a sip and immediately felt a cool feeling flowing through his body. Even his spiritual consciousness was refreshed. Good tea. Gu Changqing praised sincerely and drank it all in one gulp. This sword heart bamboo needs to be refined with my unique 9 turns to recover chi technique, which can clear the blocked meridians. A hint of smile appeared on Sun Tong's pale face. I still have some left. You can take some back. As he spoke, he waved his sleeves lightly, and in the instant that the light flashed, a bag of juicy green sword bamboo tea appeared on the table. Thank you very much. Gu Changqing's eyes flashed, and, as he also liked tea tasting, he naturally accepted it with a smile. Tell me, why did you come to see me this time? Sun Tong asked with a meaningful look in his eyes, stroking his beard. Gu Changqing put down the teacup and looked directly into Sun Tong's eyes. This time, I came here to ask for advice on the art of formation. Then he added, it would be best if it could suppress a peak Xianyang realm warrior. Oh, Sun Tong's expression gradually became serious when he heard this. You are quite courageous. You are only in the early stage of Yuan Dan realm, and you want to suppress the peak of Xianyang realm? Gu Changqing pursed his lips slightly and said nothing more. As far as I know, those who can cultivate to this level are either from the royal family or ancient martial arts families, or they're cultivators from sections. Sun Tong narrowed his eyes and asked, which force did you offend? Gu Changqing hesitated for a moment, knowing full well that if he deliberately lied at this moment, Sun Tong would refuse to teach him. To be honest, Gu Changqing lowered his eyelids slightly and said in a low voice, that man is the remnant of the blood demon sect, Wu Xiao. It's actually him. Sun Tong's eyes darkened, and he stared at Gu Changqing in disbelief. Then he suddenly remembered that when they first arrived at Tianyan Mountains a while ago, Wu Xiao suddenly appeared and angrily demanded that they hand over the person who stole the puppet. There are also all kinds of details about Gu Changqing asking for advice on the art of talisman puppetry. Thinking about it now, all the reasons suddenly become clear. Facing Sun Tong's inquiring eyes, Gu Changqing nodded slowly without explaining his thoughts. Good boy. Sun Tong suddenly laughed out loud. I really underestimated you for making that old fox lose face. But then he stopped laughing, his expression turned serious, and he said, this person has always been cruel. If he finds you, I'm afraid he won't let you go. Gu Changqing pursed his lips and said, that's why I came to ask you for advice on the formation. Sun Tong waved his hand and said sternly, if it's because of this, I will help you no matter what. Besides, that old B************** D is a remnant of the Blood Demon sect. He has been secretly endangering the monks of the Martial Arts Alliance over the years. He should have been eradicated long ago. Seeing Sun Tong's righteous look, Gu Changqing's eyes flashed. With the help of the 7 Xuanwu mansions, it would undoubtedly be safer to deal with Wu Xiao. Otherwise, even if he could take his life by himself, he would end up destroying himself along with the enemy. Take this array plate first. When Sun Tong turned his wrist, an octagonal formation plate appeared out of thin air in his palm. The array plate was completely black and only the size of a palm, but its surface was engraved with densely packed, mysterious runes, faintly emitting heart-pounding energy fluctuations. Gu Changqing's eyes fell on the array plate and saw a dark purple crystal inlaid in the center, with countless tiny electric arcs moving inside. This is the Thunder Prison Array plate, which contains a killing array, Sun Tong said calmly. Once this formation is activated, it can instantly form a thunder barrier, which has the effect of both imprisonment and killing. Gu Changqing's eyes flashed slightly. The killing array is an extremely rare high-level array. Sun Tong pointed to the 8 grooves on the edge of the array disk. Each groove needs to be embedded with a top-grade spirit stone as the center of the array. When the 8 directions are activated at the same time, even a warrior at the peak of the Xianyang realm will not be able to escape. As he spoke, he took out a bag of crystal-clear, top-grade spiritual stones and handed it to Gu Changqing. Please keep these spiritual stones. After the array is activated, remember to monitor the consumption of spirit stones at any time. You must replace them in time before the energy is exhausted. Otherwise, the power of the array will be greatly weakened. Gu Changqing nodded slightly and secretly took note of this detail. Then he stood up and clasped his fists solemnly. Thank you, Elder Sun, for your generous gift. Actually, you don't need to thank me, Sun Tong said, pouring him another cup of tea, and said meaningfully, because I also have something to ask of you. Gu Changqing stared at the other person. Why not just speak frankly? Refreshing. Sun Tong stroked his beard and smiled, then slowly said, the East Region Martial Arts Conference will be held in 3 months. According to the previous rules, new disciples who have never participated in a competition must compete. The contestants for this year's competition have already been decided, and Lin Shun is among them. But I didn't expect that he would die during his training in the secret realm, so, having said that, Sun Tong stared at Gu Changqing with a smile, and his unfinished words were already obvious. Martial arts tournament? Inside the bamboo building, a flash of surprise flashed across Gu Changqing's eyes. Looking at Sun Tong's smiling old face, he could guess the other party's intention. Elder Sun, you are joking. I am only a registered disciple of the 7th Profound Martial House. If I rashly represent the Martial House to fight, I am afraid it will be difficult to convince the crowd. Gu Changqing put down the teacup, his tone clearly expressing rejection. Although one should repay a favor with gratitude, and Sun Tong has indeed taken care of me many times these days, I feel it is better to avoid such grand occasions. A registered disciple is still a disciple of this mansion after all. Sun Tong shook his head and smiled faintly. Besides, the martial arts conference will be full of geniuses from all factions. What matters is real talent, not status. He paused for a moment, then suddenly smiled meaningfully and said, of course, if you feel that the status of a registered disciple is really embarrassing, I can accept you as my last disciple now. How about that? Gu Changqing was slightly surprised when he heard this. Although the registered disciples have the title of Kixwanwa Mansion, they have not actually entered the door and are not bound by the rules of the martial arts mansion. Even if you set up your own business in the future, it can't be considered as betraying your master. If he really becomes his disciple, you will not have to worry about resources for cultivation, but once his Qinji Pavilion is exposed, he will definitely be severely punished by the law enforcement hall. Gu Changqing quickly weighed the pros and cons in his mind and made a decision. Elder Sun, there is no need to bother. I don't mind the so-called status. Seeing that it was hard to refuse, he nodded slowly. I will give it a try in this martial arts tournament. Good. Sun Tong stroked his beard and laughed. I am looking forward to your performance. If you can win the first place, the Wu Mansion will definitely reward you handsomely. It is even possible that you will be promoted to a core disciple. When he said this, the smile on his face became more meaningful. Gu Changqing raised his eyebrows slightly when he heard this. Why does it seem that the more I resist, the more excited this old man becomes, and he seems determined to take me in as his disciple? Junior will do his best. He pursed his lips slightly and didn't say anything more. Then, Sun Tong fluttered his sleeves, took out a black iron token, and handed it to Gu Changqing. With this token, you can enter and leave the Wu Mansion freely. You will also have priority use of the various training venues within the mansion. Gu Changqing's eyes flashed, and he immediately raised his hand to take the token. There were dense cloud patterns engraved on the upper edge, and 2 dark golden characters specially free in the middle. The value of this token may be even better than the treatment of ordinary inner disciples. Sun Tong hesitated for a moment and suggested, I see that you have extraordinary attainments in swordsmanship. Why don't you go to the sword pool in the inner courtyard of Jianshao Pavilion and give it a try? Sword Pawn. Hearing this, Gu Changqing felt a little depressed, because the last time he assassinated Yang Zhao, the son of Duke Yang, it was in the area of the Sword Pond, and even alarmed the pavilion master of Jianshao Pavilion, Xiao Wuhan. However, the entire assassination process was carried out by shadow spiders and ghost moths. As long as he doesn't expose the Zerg monster in front of others, no one will be able to trace it back to him as the killer behind the scenes. I have some important matters to attend to. I will come to the Wu Mansion to visit you after I have dealt with them. Gu Changqing smiled slightly, then put the token into the storage ring. The sword pool trial is indeed precious, but the old emperor is about to die and time is running out. How can he have the mind to practice here at this moment? In that case, it won't be too late to wait until you're done. Sun Tong did not ask any more questions and immediately changed the subject. How do you plan to deal with Wu Xiao? If necessary, I can dispatch the stewards in the palace to help you kill him. Hearing this, Gu Changqing's expression changed slightly. It would be best if the stewards of the 7 Xuanwu palaces could help deal with Wu Xiao. But in this case, his true identity would inevitably be discovered by Wu Xiao, and he would escape if he failed. Then the consequences that await you will surely be endless troubles. As his mind flashed, he quickly declined. Thank you for your kindness, elder son, but I don't want to bother the 7th Xuanwu palace with this matter. I have my own way. Sun Tong looked at Gu Changqing meaningfully, as if he had already expected the latter to refuse again. He always felt that Gu Changqing was hiding many secrets and was not as simple as he seemed. However, after several contacts, he still couldn't see through the young man in front of him. It feels like looking for a needle in a haystack. You know there's a needle at the bottom of the sea, but you can't find it no matter what. Well, you can handle it yourself. Remember to do everything within your ability. Sun Tong waved his hand and said solemnly, I am tired. You can go and do your work first. Okay, I'll take my leave. Gu Changqing nodded seriously, then turned and left. After he walked out of the bamboo building, Sun Tong flipped his wrist and took out a sound transmission talisman from his storage bag. Whoosh! The talisman ignited at his fingertips, and his voice followed. Master Palace Master, I have already selected a substitute for the martial arts conference. He is the registered disciple of Wu Mansion, Gu Changqing. After a moment, under the leadership of Mo Tianxing, Gu Changqing has walked out of the mountain gate of Kixuanwu Mansion. Only when they were far away from the Wu Mansion area did he summon the ghost moth, which transformed into a green-winged eagle and sped away in the night. On the eagle's back, Gu Changqing's mind moved, and the light curtain panel of the system storage space suddenly appeared in front of him. I saw that the Thunder Prison Array plate had been placed at the top of the first grid of the storage space, so it could be taken out and stored at any time. With this array, the next plan will be more efficient. Gu Changqing's eyes narrowed as he pondered secretly. He knew very well that the most important thing in this operation was to delay Wu Xiao. As long as they can lure this powerful enemy away, the shadow spiders will have a chance to sneak into the prince's mansion and carry out the assassination. Therefore, rather than letting the stewards of the 7 Xuanwu mansions interfere and cause trouble, it would be safer to operate behind the scenes yourself. In this way, you can avoid the risk of identity exposure and ensure that everything is safe. With this thought in mind, the hunting plan that Gu Changqing had conceived in his mind gradually became clear. But before that, it is necessary to confirm whether the array is reliable. Otherwise, if it fails at a critical moment, the consequences will be disastrous. Ghost Moth, find a secluded place to land. After Gu Changqing gave an order, he took out the Thunder Prison Array plate. The moment the 8 top-grade spirit stones were embedded into the grooves one by one, the array pattern suddenly lit up and silver-purple lightning flashed across the disk, filled with heart-pounding energy fluctuations. Lap! After circling in the night sky for several times, the ghost moth suddenly folded its huge wings and landed steadily on an open space in the middle of a bamboo forest. The dense bamboos around form a natural barrier that can effectively block the view from the outside world. Thanos, come out and try. Before Changqing finished his words, a giant rhinoceros beetle fell to the ground with a thud. Its 6 thick limbs were deeply embedded in the soil, and its entire body was covered with a thick shell. Master, you want me to resist the power of this formation? Thanos stared at the Thunder Prison Array plate in Changqing's hand, with a hint of astonishment in his eyes. Although it has not actually tried it, it can already feel the terrifying energy fluctuations contained therein. Nonsense. You are the toughest among us. Who else should I look for if not you? Tiger Bee suddenly let out a strange laugh, his tone full of gloating. Aren't you usually good at pretending? How about you come? Thanos retorted without any hesitation. This can't come. The Tiger Bee responded submissively, and then kept silent, fearing that he would be called by his owner. It's okay, just bear it for a few times. Changqing smiled and comforted him. If you're injured, I will definitely heal you. Although Thanos was afraid in his heart, he could only obey his master's orders respectfully. Bring it on. Its body flashed and instantly transformed into a humanoid monster. Its arms suddenly opened, and a solid defensive barrier quickly covered its entire body. Brother Ba is mighty. At this time, the Tiger Bee couldn't help but talk nonsense again. Buzz! At this moment, Changqing's eyes became stern, and the Thunder Prison Array in his hand instantly activated. Boom! The moment the array disk was activated, the intricate lightning patterns on its surface instantly burst out with dazzling light, sweeping around like a tide. Just a moment. Countless fine lightning threads shot out from the light, instantly interweaving into a giant thundernet that covered the sky and the sun, blocking an area of dozens of feet in radius. Sizzle. Silver-purple lightning, snakes, moved wildly within the light curtain. Wherever they passed, the surrounding bamboos instantly turned into charcoal. Thanos, be careful! Changqing shouted in a deep voice and immediately activated the formation to launch an attack. Boom! The formation erupted in unrest, and more than a dozen lightning chains roared out from the thunderclouds, tightly strangling Thanos' defensive barrier like a giant python. Crack! In just a few breaths, the defensive barrier was strangled by the lightning chain, making a crisp sound like shattering glass. Thanos' muscles bulged, and he madly poured energy into his resistance. What a strong thunder force! Changqing's pupils suddenly shrank, and a gleam of light flashed in his eyes. You know, this is a Zerg rhinoceros beetle that has evolved to the elite level, and its strength is comparable to the Yuandan realm of human martial artists. In terms of defense, it can even withstand the full force attack of Xianin realm warrior. However, at this moment, Thanos' defensive barrier was already beginning to fail in this thunder prison killing array. SHHHHHH. In the void within the formation's light curtain, thunderclouds were surging, and a thick ray of lightning was quietly condensing. In addition to the thunder chain entrapment, the attack is obviously not limited to this. Boom! The next moment, a bucket-sized bolt of lightning suddenly fell down and struck Thanos' defensive barrier hard, instantly creating a spiderweb-like crack. Bang! Before Thanos could react, the second lightning bolt had already struck through his head. The defensive barrier completely collapsed, and countless arcs of electricity ran wildly along Thanos' shell, quickly spreading throughout his body. Every arc of electricity that passed through the shell would leave a charred burn mark. Thanos roared in pain, but did not back down. The horn on its head suddenly burst into a dark golden light, triggering the skill of concussion impact. Boom! Instantly, a powerful shock wave swept through the whole body, directly dispelling all the thunder that had invaded the body. In the blink of an eye, Thanos had re-erected the defensive barrier. But this time, there's an obvious shock effect, and the defense can be used for both offense and defense. Bang! 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 However, the offensive of the Thunder Prison formation became more and more intense, with bolts of lightning striking down like heavy rain. Thanos was enduring such a terrible thunder bombardment. Even though he was still holding on, his burly body kept twitching under the ravages of the electric current. TSK, TSK. Fortunately, the Master didn't ask me to try, otherwise my body wouldn't be able to handle it. Tiger Bee was dumbfounded and couldn't help but secretly admire Thanos' powerful defense. Changqing watched all this calmly and nodded secretly. Not bad. After this experiment, he had a clear understanding of the power of the formation. If it were a human warrior of the same level, he would have been destroyed to pieces by the Thunder Prison formation by now. Changqing's eyes moved slightly, and his gaze fell on the almost exhausted spirit stones on the array plate. He immediately replaced 8 top-grade spirit stones in each groove. The newly embedded top-grade spirit stone was translucent and full of energy, and the lightning that had been slightly attenuated in the array suddenly surged. Fine arcs of electricity moved across the surface of the spirit stone, instantly raising the power of the entire formation to a higher level. Thanos attacked the light curtain of the formation. Changqing controlled the formation plate, stopped the formation attack, and intended to test its strength. F***K it. It's finally my turn to attack. Thanos grinned grimly, raised his head, and let out a vengeful roar, and the horn on his head suddenly burst into a dazzling light. Bang! The next moment, its thick hind legs kicked the ground violently, and its entire body rushed towards the edge of the light curtain of the Thunder Prison formation like a cannonball. Boom! At the moment the horn collided with the light curtain, Thanos' momentum was forcibly curbed by the lightning net, and instead, because of the attack, even more terrifying thunder power was unleashed. Immediately afterwards, countless electric arcs spread throughout the body along the gaps in the shell, madly corroding the body. Thanos suddenly screamed and twisted his body in pain. Ding! It is detected that your Thanos vitality is rapidly decreasing. Please take back the system space for treatment as soon as possible. Changqing was startled and hurriedly removed the formation, and the surging lightning gradually dissipated. Thanos staggered back a few steps, and as he fell to the ground, he turned into a rhinoceros beetle with a burning smell all over his body. Changqing immediately put it into the system space and activated the treatment function. Ding! The healing function is successfully activated and begins to inject life energy into Thanos. 10%, 15%, 20%. After a while, as the progress bar reached 100%, Thanos' injuries were healed. Congratulations on the successful treatment. Your Thanos has returned to his best condition. Thanks for your hard work. Changqing pursed his lips slightly, with a hint of apology in his tone. Although Thanos is his pet, in his heart, he has long regarded it as a partner fighting side by side with him, including Shadow Spider and others. Each of these Zerg battle pets is irreplaceable. Master, don't worry. This little injury is nothing. Thanos grinned, but then changed the subject. But next time, please let Tiger Bee take over. Huh? Tiger Bee was confused and immediately retorted. Why? You're just too mean. You deserve to be punished. Thanos bared his teeth and vented all his pent-up anger. My character was created by my master after all. If you want to find someone, then look for him. Tiger Bee curled his lips and said angrily. Changqing smiled silently. According to this logic, it was indeed true. Then he turned his gaze to the Thunder Prison array in his hand. After this attempt, his confidence was undoubtedly greatly increased. Next, it's time to let that old D have a taste of thunder. Changqing narrowed his eyes slightly, and then gave a decisive order. Action! As soon as the words fell, Shadow Spider, Mantis, Ghost Moth, Tiger Bee, and Blood Spirit, 5 insect shadows rushed out almost at the same time. Only Thanos remained by Changqing's side, guarding him closely. The night is deep. 5 insect shadows cut through the sky and rushed towards the Imperial capital at an astonishing speed. When they approached the city wall, they suddenly dispersed. All switched to the form of ordinary insects and quietly sneaked towards the Imperial city. Shadow Spider and Tiger Bee are in one group. You're responsible for leading Wu Xiao out. Deep in the bamboo forest outside the city, Changqing controls the overall situation behind the scenes through the shared vision of the insect swarm. Spider, ride me. After receiving the order, the Tiger Bee immediately flew to the side of the Shadow Spider with great enthusiasm, and its voice could not hide its excitement. The Shadow Spider suddenly shot out a spider silk that wrapped around the Tiger Bee's feet, then used the force to leap and landed lightly on the Tiger Bee's back. Whoosh! The next moment, the 2 Zergs turned into a black shadow and flew straight towards the East Palace of the Imperial City. As it arrived at its destination, the Tiger Bee flapped its wings and hovered in the night sky, sweeping its cold eyes downwards, taking in the entire layout of the prince's mansion. The vast mansion is magnificent, with pavilions and towers scattered throughout, and the carved beams and painted buildings displaying the royal luxury everywhere. In the open, one can see black armored guards standing in every corner, with 1 sentry every 5 steps and 1 guard post every 10 steps. Their eyes were sharp, alert to any disturbance around them, and they were obviously elite troops drawn from the army. These people are only the superficial defensive force, and there are many martial arts masters hidden inside the mansion. According to the information collected by Fong Baiyu, there are 12 warriors in the Xianin realm. However, the one who truly poses the greatest threat is Wu Xiao, who has already reached the peak of the Xianyang realm. The prince's residence should be over there. With the help of the compound eyes of the Hornet, Changqing observed for a while, and his eyes were fixed on a pavilion in the center of the mansion. I saw that the defense there was even tighter, with more than 100 black armored guards surrounding the area, patrolling back and forth without any gaps. Such a strict defense system can be called an iron wall. Even if an ordinary assassin could sneak into the palace, he would probably be unable to escape before even seeing the prince. At this time, the ghost moth, the mantis, and the blood spirit had already arrived one after another. They take the form of common insects such as moths, mantises, and mosquitoes, lurking on the high walls. A mysterious light flashed in the ghost moth's eyes, and the pupil of emptiness suddenly opened. In an instant, the entire interior scene of the prince's mansion was in full view. The ghost moth's attention was mainly focused on the main building in the center. The sight penetrated through layers of obstructions and saw that in the hall on the top floor of the pavilion, the lights were on and 2 figures were playing chess in front of a chessboard. That old B************* D is really here. Changqing stared at the skinny and hunched figure, a hint of coldness flashing in his eyes. When his gaze shifted to the person opposite him, his eyes darkened. The young man was wearing a black python robe and had a stern face. Although his facial features are somewhat similar to those of the 6th Prince Chu Linyuan, he is more fierce and majestic. There is no doubt that this person is Crown Prince Chu Jingyan. Mr. Wu, it looks like I won this round. Chu Jingyan curled his thin lips slightly, holding a black jade chess piece between his fingers, and tapping it on the chessboard made a crisp sound. Your Highness, this move of annihilating all is really ingenious. Wu Xiao's skinny fingers hovered above the chessboard, and he chuckled. It's a pity that I still have a hidden chess move. After saying this, the chess piece in his hand fell, suddenly reversing the deadlock on the chessboard and even forming a siege. Oh! Seeing this, Chu Jingyan's eyes flashed slightly, and his fingertips hovered above the chessboard without falling. He suddenly realized that this game had fallen into Wu Xiao's trap from the beginning, and he was always being led by the nose. Every move seemed to have been carefully planned by the opponent. The chess game that was thought to have a great chance of winning turned out to be a dead end in the end. In the bamboo forest, Changqing could see the whole process of the chess game through the gaze of the ghost moth's hollow eye. What a trick to lure you into a trap. A meaningful arc appeared on the corner of his mouth. Life is like chess. It really is so. According to Lin Chen's memories from his previous life, after the crown prince ascended the throne, he was transformed into a slave puppet by Wu Xiu using a secret technique, secretly controlling the entire Great Yong dynasty. This huge country eventually fell apart and eventually went to destruction. Your Highness, your chess style today is fierce and murderous. Wu Xiu saw Chu Jingyan was distracted. His eyes narrowed slightly, and he said slowly, Your Highness, you know that the murderous aura on the chessboard often reflects the state of mind of the player. Murderous look? Hearing this, Chu Jingyan frowned slightly. My father has been critically ill recently, and the situation in the court has shown signs of unrest. If I want to succeed to the throne smoothly, I must kill the chicken to scare the monkey. Wu Xiu asked, So, Your Highness, do you have a candidate? Chu Jingyan's stern face flashed a hint of coldness. My sixth brother has been in frequent contact with the Ministry of War recently, and even dared to place spies in my father's bedroom. At this point, his voice suddenly turned grim. Since you're so eager to get promoted, aren't you just the right person to be the chicken to scare the monkeys? Wu Xiu said calmly. The sixth prince was able to find out the secret agents that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince have planted in his mansion, which shows that he has great means. This boy really cannot be kept. I just wonder if there is an expert behind the sixth prince. Chu Jingyan smiled coldly. Even if he has a master behind him, don't I have Mr. Wu? Hearing this, Wu Xiu's eyes flashed with a strange light, as if he was smiling. It is enough for me to be praised so highly by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. As he was speaking, his cloudy eyes narrowed slightly, as if he had noticed something, and his sinister gaze swept towards the dark night sky outside the window. Mr. Wu, is there anything unusual outside? Chu Jingyan's eyes narrowed, and he asked in a low voice. Nothing, just a bug peeping at me. Wu Xiu's eyes darkened slightly, and he said sinisterly, I didn't go looking for you, but I came to you instead. Insects. Chu Jingyan's eyes flashed with surprise. But is it the mysterious beast master you mentioned last time? Exactly, Wu Xiu said coldly. That half-tiger talisman must be in this person's possession. Your Highness, please wait here for a moment. I gave you this amulet. Remember to carry it with you. Before he finished speaking, black mist shrouded him, and he transformed into a black shadow, which flew out of the window and then rose up on a gray roulette wheel. Finally, I took the bait. Gu Changqing's eyes flashed, and he immediately said, Shadow Spider, Tiger Bee, proceed according to the plan. The moment it received the order, the tiger bee flapped its wings violently, deliberately making a shrill, buzzing sound in the night sky. Such restlessness immediately attracted Wu Xiu's attention. It's indeed those two insect beasts. His cold eyes instantly locked onto the tiger bee and shadow spider, and he suddenly snapped his fingers. Laugh! A stream of black gas, like an arrow, broke through the air and shot towards the tiger bee. The light from the tiger bee's compound eyes suddenly increased, and its tail trembled rapidly, suddenly shooting out an explosive poison needle. Bang! The poison needle collided with the black gas, and a loud bang was heard in the night. Enemy attack. Protect His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. The sudden explosion immediately alarmed the black-armored guards in the mansion. Even the 12 Xianin realm masters who were stationed in various locations in the mansion rushed out one after another. For a moment, the main building where Chu Jingyan was located was surrounded by layers of defense and was tightly guarded. My blood spirit puppet was stolen, so I'll use you to refine the insect puppet. Wu Xiu stared at the tiger bee and shadow spider with a cold gaze and grinned. We can retreat now. Seeing that the goal had been achieved, Gu Changqing suddenly gave an order. Yes. As the command was given, the shadow spider leaped up from the tiger bee's back, spewing out dozens of spider silk threads that intertwined into a web, covering Wu Xiu. Spider, hold on tight. The tiger bee flapped its wings and flew up, accurately catching the falling shadow spider. It made a sharp turn in midair, and suddenly rushed towards the outskirts of the city. A mere insect cannot stop me. Wu Xiao snorted coldly, and the gray roulette wheel under his feet spun, creating a fierce gust of wind that tore the spider web into pieces. He narrowed his eyes and locked onto the direction in which the tiger bee was escaping, then turned into a black shadow and chased after it at an even faster speed. Ghost Moth, prepare for action. Seeing Wu Xiao being led away by the tiger bees, Changqing immediately gave orders. The next moment, the ghost moth flew to a dark corner of the outer wall of the mansion, and its body began to wriggle and deform. In the blink of an eye, it had transformed into a skinny old man in a black robe, who looked exactly like Wu Xiao. Blade Mantis, Blood Spirit, it's our turn. Under the outer wall of the East Palace, Gui Moth spoke hoarsely, and his voice was exactly the same as Wu Xiao's own. As soon as he finished speaking, two insect shadows suddenly crawled into the wide sleeves of the robe, and all their breath disappeared. Gui raised his hand to straighten his clothes and walked towards the main gate of the prince's mansion with his hand behind his back, looking like Wu Xiao. Meet Mr. Wu. The two black-armored guards at the gate immediately saluted respectfully. The ghost moth imitated Wu Xiao's expression and glanced at the two of them with a sinister gaze, as if he was looking at two dead objects. The two black-armored guards lowered their heads, not daring to even raise their eyes, and were as silent as a mouse. They knew very well that in the prince's palace, Wu Xiao's status had long surpassed that of ordinary guests or advisors. They vaguely remembered that a few months ago, a new captain of the guard was killed by having his throat cut on the spot, just because he spoke a few words to Wu Xiaodua. You know, he was a warrior whose strength had reached the Yuandan realm, but he didn't even have the strength to resist in the hands of this old man. After the test, Gui Moth showed a barely perceptible smile at the corner of his mouth and walked straight into the gate. Thanks to Wu Xiao's extraordinary status in the prince's mansion, it had a smooth journey until it arrived in front of the main building. Mr. Wu, the black-armored guards patrolling here hurriedly bowed and saluted, not daring to breathe. When the 12 Xianin realm masters saw Wu Xiao, they immediately hurried forward to greet him. The middle-aged strong man in the lead asked cautiously, Mr. Wu, what happened just now? Don't ask questions about things you shouldn't know. Just do your job well. Gui Moth glanced at everyone coldly and spoke in a grim tone. Yes. The middle-aged man looked stern and did not dare to refute at all. Gui Moth said nothing more. He walked steadily into the main building and went straight to the top-floor hall. The whole process was flawless. In the magnificent hall, Chu Jingyan still sat calmly in front of the chessboard, fiddling with the chess pieces with his slender fingers. Obviously, he had full confidence in the strict guard of the prince's mansion. Mr. Wu, did you gain anything? Seeing Wu Xiao return so quickly, Chu Jingyan raised his eyebrows slightly, with a hint of inquiry in his tone. They were just some insignificant insects. They had been dealt with. Gui Moth looked indifferent, and then changed the subject. The political situation is turbulent now. Does your highness always carry your protective gear with you? Chu Jingyan raised the corners of his lips slightly. Since it is given by the master, I will naturally stay with you for a moment. The ghost moth stretched out his pale, withered hand and said solemnly, I have recently comprehended a new method and can recarve the runes for your highness. The defensive effect will be even better than before. After a slight modification, even if a peak Xianyang realm expert attacks, it will be difficult to hurt your highness in the slightest. Hearing this, Chu Jingyan's eyes lit up. That's great. After saying this, he took out an ancient jade talisman from his lapel without hesitation. After all, this item was originally a protective treasure given by Wu Xiao, which could withstand the fatal blow of a Xianin realm warrior. However, once facing the attack of a strong man in the Xianyang realm, its effectiveness will be greatly reduced. If his power could be increased at this moment, Chu Jingyan would naturally be more than happy to do so, and he did not have the slightest doubt. The moment Gui Moth took the jade talisman, he clearly felt the powerful energy contained in it. Gu Changqing used the shared vision to focus his eyes on it. The material of the jade talisman seemed to be made of some kind of animal bone. The whole body was as cold and white as frost, and dark golden runes could be vaguely seen flowing around the edges. If the person holding this item is attacked, the runes on the jade talisman will be instantly activated, forming a protective shield to defend against the attack. But now, a flash of cold light flashed in the ghost moth's eyes, but it did not rush to attack Changqing. Instead, it put him into Changqing's system space. "Mr. Wu, don't you want to change the jade talisman?" Seeing this, Changqing couldn't help but ask. Without the amulet, he felt an inexplicable sense of uneasiness deep in his heart. "No hurry." The ghost moth smiled slightly. "This transformation will take several hours, and it will also require a drop of your blood to enhance the defensive effect." "I see." Changqing looked at Wu Xiao in front of him and believed it without a doubt. Then he cut his fingertips, and a drop of bright red blood slowly seeped out. Ghost Moth raised his hand naturally, and the moment it touched the blood bead, a barely perceptible scarlet light flashed. The blood spirit hidden in his sleeves suddenly used the blood evil seal to invade Changqing's wound, and it flowed wildly along his blood vessels. Due to the sudden change, Changqing's pupils suddenly shrank and the muscles under his python robe tensed instantly. He instinctively wanted to mobilize the true energy in his body, but was horrified to find that his energy and blood were being rapidly devoured by some strange force. Buzz! The ghost moth didn't waste any more words and immediately ignited an isolation talisman. A translucent curtain of light unfolded like a water curtain, covering the entire hall in an instant. At the same time, a strange light flashed in the depths of its eyes, and the invisible spiritual waves spread out and attacked Changqing's sea of consciousness. Changqing immediately held his head with both hands and let out a scream. However, under the cover of the isolating light curtain, no one noticed any unusual movement, no matter how many experts there were in the outside world. At the moment when Changqing was in a trance due to the mental attack, the mantis suddenly jumped up, and its icy blue blades slashed towards Changqing's throat. The action was extremely quick and decisive, and every move was a killing move. Laugh! A cold light flashed by, and his neck was instantly cut open by the knife. However, there was no blood splattering from the wound. Instead, a layer of frost was covering the wound at a speed visible to the naked eye. The bone-chilling cold immediately penetrated into the body through the blood vessels, and together with the blood evil seal, it madly destroyed the internal organs. "You are not Mr. Wu." Changqing's face turned pale, and he suddenly realized it, staring at Wu Xiao in front of him in disbelief. "It's too late to find out now." A strange smile appeared on the ghost moth's face, and then its body shook and suddenly turned into its original monster form. Then its sharp claws stabbed out suddenly. Puff! Blood splattered, and Changqing's chest was instantly pierced by the sharp claws through his heart. His body twitched, and he fell into a pool of blood. His pupils trembled violently, and his eyes were filled with unwillingness and despair. Until the moment he died, he still couldn't accept that after all his life's planning, he would end up like this. Ghost Moth, eat his memories. After Changqing was successfully assassinated, Changqing immediately gave orders. Lap! The two tentacles on the ghost moth's head suddenly extended out and pierced Changqing's head accurately. After a moment, countless memory fragments were plundered frantically and then transmitted to Changqing's sea of consciousness. After doing all this, the blood spirit suddenly controlled the blood evil seal and devoured all the remaining blood and energy of the corpse. In the blink of an eye, the body of the current prince had turned into a dried corpse, and his death was miserable. The mantis swung its blade limbs, picked up the golden storage ring swiftly, and put it into the system space. Withdraw. The ghost moth, the mantis, and the blood spirit disappeared instantly. Changqing had an idea and recalled the 3 insect beasts to the system. The entire hunting process was foolproof. deep in the bamboo forest under the night sky. Gu Changqing's eyes narrowed as he stared in the direction of the imperial capital. Faintly, I saw a black shadow rushing towards this side. Next, it's time to deal with that old B*****************. D. A chill flashed in Gu Changqing's eyes. He then turned his wrist slightly, took out a white mask from the storage ring, and put it on his face. Meanwhile, in the suburbs, that old guy is really chasing us. The tiger bee glanced at Wu Xiao, who was chasing it closely behind it, and the vibration speed of its wings had reached the limit. However, even so, the distance between the two sides is getting closer and closer. If we continue like this, we will be intercepted before we reach the bamboo forest at the planned location. The insect puppet I've set my sights on will try to escape in vain. Wu Xiao's eyes were sinister as he fixed his eyes on the speeding insect shadow in front of him, and a cold sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth. The reason why we didn't actually take action in the city just now was simply because we were worried about being discovered by some martial arts experts. At this moment, the two insect beasts fled to the outskirts of the city, which was obviously exactly what he wanted. Dark prison. Wu Xiao's skinny right hand suddenly grabbed, and his 5 fingers closed in an instant. Boom! In an instant, thick black gas whizzed out from between his fingers and quickly contracted towards the tiger bee from all directions. Wherever the black gas passed, the air seemed to solidify, blocking all the tiger bee's escape routes. The tiger bee's body froze, and it felt as if it was stuck in a quagmire. No matter how hard it flapped its wings, it could not break free. Dark state of mind. Through shared perception, Gu Changqing sensed an obscure dark energy, which contained fluctuations of laws that transcended the true essence system. However, Shadow Spider's innate skill, Shadow Shuttle, also has a dark atmosphere. As long as you don't come into direct conflict with the opponent's dark power, you can use this characteristic to your advantage. Whoosh! On the bee's back, the Shadow Spider activated its skills, and the surging black air around it was used as a springboard by it to shuttle out. Yo-ho! Spider and I combined. We're a perfect match. The tiger bee screamed excitedly, then flapped its wings wildly and flew away quickly with the Shadow Spider. How is this possible? Wu Xiao's pupils shrank slightly, and a look of disbelief appeared on his face. I never thought that the dark imprisonment technique that I had studied for many years could be cracked so easily. What shocked him even more was that the shadow shuttle performed by the Shadow Spider clearly contained energy fluctuations of dark artistic conception. The body of a mere ant can actually touch the realm of darkness. Wu Xiao narrowed his eyes slightly, with a greedy gleam in his eyes. It seems that today, I will pick up a treasure. With a sinister laugh, the roulette wheel under his feet spun rapidly, and his whole body turned into a black stream of light, rushing towards the bamboo forest. Master, we're here. When it was near the bamboo forest, the urgent sound of a tiger bee suddenly came. At this moment, Gu Changqing's figure had already disappeared into the shadows, and the Thunder Prison Array plate in his hand was filled with spiritual power, waiting for the prey to fall into the net. Swoosh! Swoosh! The tiger bee did not slow down and dive into the depths of the bamboo forest. Seeing this, Wu Xiao did not follow closely, but instead stepped on the gray wheel and hovered above the bamboo forest. Now, you can't escape even if you have wings. He looked down coldly at the place where the tiger bees fled, a ferocious excitement appearing on his face. After saying that, Wu Xiao suddenly waved his sleeves and summoned a black array plate. Buzz! The moment the formation disk was activated, a huge formation light curtain quickly condensed and appeared like an inverted giant bowl, suddenly covering the entire bamboo forest. I'll go. Gu Changqing's heart sank suddenly at the sudden change. He originally planned to catch the turtle in the jar, but unexpectedly, the other party cut off his retreat. But after careful perception, he found that this formation was not a killing formation like the Thunder Prison formation, but a pure blockade formation. Just like the barrier of the ancient curtain of the secret realm, this formation only has an isolating effect, and does not have any substantial killing power. But even so, the current situation has exceeded his expectations. Wu Xiao swooped down on the roulette wheel and looked around with a cold gaze. The layers of bamboo forest serve as a natural shield in the night. I want to see where you can hide. Wu Xiao snorted coldly, and a thick black gas spread around his body, surging violently and suddenly sweeping across like a tide. Boom! In an instant, countless green bamboos were turned into powder under the erosion of black air. As the surrounding cover was destroyed, a black figure suddenly appeared in the field of vision. There is someone hiding in here. Wu Xiao's eyes darkened slightly, and he saw the man standing on a huge rock, his black robe fluttering in the wind and waves, and his eyes under the mask were as cold as the abyss. "Are you the Beastmaster?" He looked at Gu Changqing gloomily, with murderous intent in his eyes. "How are you, old man?" Gu Changqing simply stopped pretending and smiled coldly. "I didn't expect to meet you here." Wu Xiao laughed grimly. "This is really a case of searching for something without any effort, but it finally came to me." "So what?" Gu Changqing's mouth showed a hint of coldness. "The key is whether you have the ability." Before he finished his words, 6 insect shadows flashed out from his left and right sides. Shadow Spider, Mantis, Tiger Bee, Blood Spirit, Ghost Moth, Thanos. The moment they appeared, they all turned into humanoid monsters, and their aura suddenly surged. "I admit that your pets are indeed extraordinary, but..." Wu Xiao narrowed his eyes slightly and said sinisterly, "Do you really think you can do anything to me with just a few insects?" Gu Changqing didn't comment and said calmly, "You can give it a try. Act recklessly." Wu Xiao snorted coldly, and black gas spread out in his hand, instantly condensing into a pitch-black spear that shot out violently. Lap! The black spear tore through the air and shot straight into Gu Changqing's face. At the same time, the light from the horn above Thanos' head suddenly increased, and a defensive barrier suddenly rose up. Boom! The black spear collided with the defensive barrier, and terrifying energy ripples instantly spread out. Thanos' muscles bulged, and he blocked the attack. A rhinoceros beetle monster? A hint of surprise flashed across Wu Xiao's eyes. This defense is quite impressive, but it's only 2 times. As he spoke, the true energy in his body suddenly burst out, and the powerful aura of the peak of the Xinyang realm roared out. Bang! With a slap of his palm, the surging energy instantly condensed into a black palm shadow, which slammed heavily on the defensive barrier. Crack! With just one palm strike, a crisp sound was heard from the defensive barrier, and spiderweb-like cracks quickly spread out. However, Thanos was well aware of the opponent's strength and had already made adequate preparations. As the cracks appeared, a strong light emanated from the horn on its head. The defensive barrier that was on the verge of collapse was restored to its original state in an instant, and the light curtain barrier even became more solid. "It seems you're just like that." Gu Changqing raised his eyebrows, trying to provoke the other party. They were still far away at the moment and were not within the range of the Thunder Prison formation. If you rashly use the formation, given the cautious mind of this old fox, he will definitely escape at the first opportunity. What's more, Wu Xiao is very powerful. Even with the Thunder Prison formation, it would be difficult to kill him in a short time. Only by depleting the opponent's true energy in advance can you increase your chances of winning. Therefore, we must proceed step by step for now and not be impatient. I hope you can still be so sharp-tongued later. Wu Xiao's face was grim, and his eyes became more sinister. Thinking back to the time when the Blood Evil sect was besieged by the Martial Arts Alliance, he was able to fight his way out. But now he was being sneered at by an unknown junior. How could he swallow this? Then, he stepped on the roulette wheel and rushed towards Gu Changqing. The overwhelming murderous intent turned into a tangible black mist, like the scream of an evil spirit. Whoosh! The next moment, the shadow spider had quietly disappeared into a shadow without him knowing when, and now it was extending its sharp claws from the shadow, stabbing him in the back. Roll! Wu Xiao noticed it instantly, and his true energy surged out, instantly condensing into a protective shield on his body surface. Clang! The shadow spider's sharp claws pierced the protective shield fiercely, but failed to penetrate it. Wu Xiao grabbed the shadow spider by the neck with his backhand. "You spider monster, do you dare to sneak attack me?" Shadow spider's mouth curled up into a sly smile. "Really?" The next moment, the shadow spider twisted its body and turned into a small spider. While it was struggling to break free from Wu Xiao's grasp, it retreated along the shadows. Wu Xiao's pupils suddenly shrank as he realized that these insect beasts had the ability to switch form. This simple catching method has no effect at all. Swish! Just at this moment, the figure of the mantis flashed over, crossed his two swords, and slashed down suddenly. Bang! Although Wu Xiao had a protective shield to resist, he was still shocked and retreated repeatedly in the face of such a fierce attack. Before he could fight back, Ghost Moth had already launched a mental attack to block him. Immediately afterwards, a blood-red figure came over, and the fierce fist wind carrying the bloody evil spirit smashed heavily on Wu Xiao's protective shield. Boom! This punch instantly cracked the protective shield. The blood spirit's lord-level combat power is the strongest in the Zerg team, comparable to a Xianin realm warrior. Although his strength was not as good as Wu Xiao's, his power should not be underestimated. He directly knocked Wu Xiao's body down to the ground. Swish, swish, swish. At the same time, the tiger bee shot out countless poisonous stingers, which hit the protective shield like a rainstorm. As all the poison needles exploded, the protective shield shook violently and finally couldn't hold on with a dull explosion and collapsed on the spot. UB********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************* Xiao was furious. He swung his right hand violently, and thick black gas whizzed out, forcibly repelling several Zergs that were approaching him. Although he was not injured by this attack, his black robe was already tattered, and he looked quite embarrassed. Continue. However, Changqing would not give him any chance to breathe and immediately gave the order. The moment the command was issued, the shadow under Wu Xiao's feet squirmed, and the shadow spider came silently, suddenly spitting out silk, instantly wrapping around his legs. Immediately afterwards, another 5 Zergs rushed over again and fought fiercely with Wu Xiao with a fierce attack. Wu Xiao became more and more frightened as the fight went on. He could only defend himself blindly and did not dare to engage in a head-on confrontation. After all, although these Zerg monsters are weak, their physical fitness is extremely strong, and they can still withstand being hit by a palm. On the other hand, his skinny little body would definitely not be able to withstand a heavy punch. No matter how strong you are still afraid of the young and strong. 6 Zerg monsters attacked together, but they could only hold back one person at the peak of the Xianyang realm. Changqing stared at the scene before him and couldn't help but sigh inwardly at the gap in their cultivation levels. Puff! At this moment, after resisting Wu Xiao's fatal blow, Thanos flew backwards and fell heavily to the ground. Bang! Then, another dull sound was heard. The tiger bee screamed and fell not far away, with its stinger torn off. Afterwards, 3 insect shadows were blown away one after another, namely the mantis, the shadow spider, and the ghost moth. Obviously, the weakest ones were all injured and eliminated, and only the blood spirit was still resisting, and even used the skill of blood rage. The blood spirit's body was filled with violent bloody aura, and its combat power was rising steadily, approaching the level of half-step Xianyang realm. After this high-intensity battle, Wu Xiao was already out of breath, and the energy surging through his body was obviously much weaker than before. This is the aura of the blood spirit puppet. Wu Xiao felt the bloody, evil aura lingering around the blood spirit, and his heart suddenly sank. His eyes fixed, staring at the faintly visible dark golden lines on the blood spirit's body, and his pupils couldn't help but tremble violently, because these patterns are exactly the runes that he personally engraved when he was refining the blood spirit puppet. But at this moment, the Zerg monster in front of him was not a blood spirit puppet at all. What on earth is going on? Wuxiu was filled with surprise and doubt. He found it hard to imagine that the blood spirit puppet could merge with the Zerg into one. Just as he was puzzled, a cold light flashed in Gu Changqing's eyes, and the Thunder Prison formation plate in his hand suddenly activated. Boom! In an instant, countless purple lightning burst out from the array plate, transforming into a huge lightning net, instantly covering the area where Wuxiu was. Thunder Prison Killing Array. Wuxiu finally reacted at this time, feeling the power of thunder filling the formation, and was immediately horrified. He stared at Gu Changqing in shock. He never expected that this guy actually had a backup plan. The Mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the Oriole behind. Now it's your turn. Gu Changqing held the formation plate in his hand with a playful smile on his face. In the past few days, I was always walking on thin ice when facing this old B****************, but now I finally got the chance. Although this trapping formation is powerful, don't forget that your insect beasts are also in the formation. Wuxiu said grimly. If we activate the formation to attack, they will not be able to escape death. Oh! Gu Changqing raised the corner of his mouth slightly and said meaningfully, that may not be the case. As soon as he finished speaking, the 6 Zergs disappeared instantly and were all stored in his system space. As Gu Changqing's mind moved, the shadow spiders instantly disappeared from Wuxiu's sight. How is this possible? Seeing this scene, Wuxiu's eyes suddenly widened and his face was full of disbelief. This completely overturned his understanding of the art of taming beasts. He had never seen a living pet beast being captured out of thin air. This is totally unreasonable. If this is true, what kind of space were those pets stored in? You little b********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** do that? Wu Xiu raised his head and stared at Gu Changqing, his tone full of doubt. Gu Changqing's eyes beneath the mask were filled with indifference, and he paid no attention at all. Then he activated the formation plate in his hand, and lightning patterns flowed rapidly, making crackling sounds. Boom! At the same time, thunderclouds suddenly surged within the formation, emitting a heart-pounding explosion. The sky was filled with lightning that struck down with a loud bang, illuminating the entire space like daylight, flickering continuously. Wu Xiu's face changed drastically, and he hastily summoned the gray disk, which was suspended above his head and spinning rapidly, forming a defensive barrier. Bang! The first bolt of lightning, as thick as a bowl, came crashing down, hitting the disk hard, with lightning splashing. Although it was resisted, the rotation speed was visibly slowed down. Boom! The second thunder followed with a blinding light, striking the gray disk violently and causing it to emit an unbearable buzzing sound. Boom! 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 In an instant, flashes of lightning flashed one after another, pouring down like a rainstorm. The gray disk floating above Wu Xiu's head was rapidly covered with spiderweb-like cracks under the continuous lightning strikes. Swish! The blinding electric light penetrated through the cracks and coiled around Wu Xiu's skinny body like countless poisonous snakes. The electric current penetrated his meridians and raged between his bones. Ugh! Wu Xiu's hunched body twitched violently, his wrinkled, old face twisted instantly, and he couldn't help but let out a cry of pain. Obviously, the severe pain that he had not felt for many years made his long, rotten body tremble uncontrollably. He hurriedly circulated his true energy throughout his body, dispelling all the thunder and lightning power that was invading his body. Little b asterisk 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 d. Wu Xiu cursed. I will definitely pull out your tendons and skin you alive and turn you into a slave puppet. However, he hadn't finished speaking yet. Crack! The roulette wheel floating above his head suddenly made a crisp cracking sound, and the entire disc exploded, with countless fragments scattering in all directions. The next moment, the thunder struck down and hit Wu Xiu hard. Amidst his shrill screams, his entire body was entangled in raging electric arcs, and the air was suddenly filled with the smell of burnt flesh. Gu Changqing stared at Wu Xiu's miserable appearance coldly, but his expression did not fluctuate at all. His attention was always on the 8 top-grade spirit stones that were being rapidly consumed on the array plate. Nothing can be taken lightly until this old B*** D is killed. You think you were the only one with a trump card? Wu Xiu staggered back a few steps, then suddenly let out a hideous laugh. After saying that, he suddenly raised his hand, and the storage ring flashed with a faint light. Swish, swish, swish. In an instant, 8 pitch-black puppets appeared out of thin air like ghosts. Laugh! Wu Xiu bit his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. As the blood mist surged, the eyes of the 8 talisman puppets suddenly lit up, and they quickly formed a formation to protect him in the center. Immediately afterwards, a thick light curtain appeared, offsetting most of the raging thunder. If you hold on for just a moment longer, that little beast will die. Wu Xiu's face was sinister, and a hideous smile appeared at the corner of his blood-stained mouth. He had already figured out in his mind that although the Thunder Prison Killing Array could imprison him, it was not invulnerable. The key lies in the 8 top-grade spirit stones that activate the formation. As long as the spirit stones are used up, the power of the formation will definitely weaken. At that time, when the opponent changes the spirit stone, it will be the best opportunity for him to counterattack. Gu Changqing narrowed his eyes slightly. How could he not see what the other party was planning? At this time, the light of the 8 spirit stones in the grooves of the array plate was dimming at a speed visible to the naked eye, and it was obvious that they could not hold on for much longer. Want to wait until the spirit stones are exhausted? Gu Changqing's eyes flashed coldly, and he said coldly, "If that's the case, then it's as you wish." After saying that, he suddenly activated the core of the formation disk, directly increasing the power of the formation to the extreme. Buzz! As the array plate vibrated violently, the 8 spirit stones embedded in it were instantly drained of their energy, bursting out with blinding light. But this is not enough. Gu Changqing mobilized all the true energy in his body without hesitation, and the energy in the Yuandan poured out like a flood, all poured into the formation plate. In an instant, the entire Thunder Prison Killing Array fell into an eerie silence at this moment. Boom! Just 3 breaths later, the space in the formation seemed to be detonated by thunder, and a shocking loud noise was heard. The thunder clouds within the light curtain rolled wildly, and in an instant condensed into a huge vortex of thunder in the sky. Madman! Wu Xiu's face changed suddenly when he saw this sudden scene. I thought Gu Changqing would proceed step by step and see who can last to the end. Who would have thought that this kid would be so unconventional, not only draining all the spirit stones on the array plate, but even risking his own true essence? At that moment, Wu Xiu hurriedly urged the 8 talisman puppets to defend with all their strength. Boom! Just at this moment, the destructive vortex of thunder crashed down. Crack! 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 The defensive barrier formed by the talisman puppet was torn into pieces in an instant like thin paper, and the body made of black iron also exploded in the lightning, with fragments flying everywhere. No! Wu Xiu's eyes were bloodshot, and the protective energy in his body was running wildly. But the power of this attack was far beyond imagination. The violent lightning arc instantly penetrated his defense and sucked him into the center of the vortex. Oh! Suddenly, shrill screams echoed in the thunderstorm. When the last trace of lightning dissipated, a body covered in blood and charred flesh fell to the ground with a dull sound. It's over. Gu Changqing looked at Wu Xiu's charred body, which was no longer in human form, and took a deep breath. As the internal energy had been exhausted, his face turned pale, and even standing seemed a bit strenuous for him. Ghost Moth, I leave it to you. After Gu Changqing gave an order, he took out a spirit-gathering pill from the storage ring, put it into his mouth, and began to sit in meditation and regulate his breathing. The ghost moth immediately flew over, and its eyes suddenly locked onto the black storage ring on the corpse. However, Just as it was about to step forward and take it away, something strange happened. Whoosh! A black shadow suddenly jumped out from the corpse at an extremely fast speed and rushed straight to the face of the ghost moth. The ghost moth was unable to dodge and was penetrated by the black shadow, heading straight for its sea of consciousness. Ding! System alarm. It is detected that your pet ghost moth is being possessed by a residual soul. Please deal with it immediately. Possession. Hearing the system prompt, Changqing suddenly opened his eyes. The ghost moth's body was seen twitching violently, and a strange gray-white mist appeared on the surface of its compound eyes. In this situation, it is obvious that he is trying his best to resist Wu Xiu's attempt to take over his body. Fortunately, the ghost moth has strong mental power. If it were the shadow spiders, they probably wouldn't even have a chance to resist. This old thing can still fight back even after his death. Changqing frowned, somewhat unprepared for this. Although this insect body is not of the best choice, it can still be used, hee. Wu Xiu's cold laughter came out from the ghost moth's body, showing his smugness. Ding! System alarm. The progress of the remaining soul in the ghost moth taking over another body is 10%. 15%. May I ask if I could devour the residual soul in reverse? Hearing the system prompt, Changqing's eyes flickered and he silently said without hesitation, yes. Ding, the command has been confirmed. Successfully deducted 500 energy points, and the progress of possession was reversed. The next moment, an invisible energy that transcends the shackles of heaven suddenly poured into the ghost moth's body, causing a terrifying wave in the depths of its sea of consciousness. The energy was extremely overbearing and instantly reversed the situation, tearing Wu Xiu's remaining soul into pieces and devouring it bit by bit. No, this is impossible. Wu Xiu was horrified and screamed in disbelief. How could the spiritual power of this insect suddenly become so strong? However, as his remaining soul was devoured by the ghost moth, he suddenly let out a scream of pain and despair. I can't rest in peace even when I die. I'm just asking for trouble. Changqing watched coldly and couldn't help but secretly feel lucky that the system did not fail at the critical moment. Otherwise, if this old B************* D really succeeds in taking over my body, it will be much more difficult. After a while, Wu Xiu's screams stopped abruptly and disappeared completely. The look in the ghost moth's eyes returned to normal. A faint blue halo emanated from its body, and its aura was even more condensed than before. Bite! At this time, the system prompt sounded again. The ghost moth successfully devoured the residual soul of the Xianyang realm, breaking through the critical point of the progress bar and successfully advancing. Congratulations on your ghost moth's promotion to the Lord level. Its combat power has been comprehensively improved. Unlock new skills. Spirit Puppet Phantom Kill. Changqing's eyes lit up. It was a pleasant surprise that the ghost moth could evolve this time. Then his mind moved slightly, and a translucent system panel immediately appeared in front of his eyes. Demon Moth. Sequence 004. Level Lord. Strength Assessment. Comparable to the Xianyang realm of a human martial artist. Attack skills: Mental Illusion, Spirit Puppet Illusion. Auxiliary skills: Mimicry, I Avoid. Innate abilities: Immune to toxins, can cast illusions to confuse enemies and cause mental damage, can imitate any life form seen. Changqing stared at the new skill, Spirit Puppet Illusion Killing, that had appeared on the panel and immediately called up the detailed information. Effect: 5 spirit puppets can be summoned at the same time to fight together, and each spirit puppet has independent physical attack capabilities. Features: when a spirit puppet is destroyed by the enemy, it will instantly trigger a mental shock wave, causing soul shock to the enemy. This skill has the dual effects of physical attack and mental blow. After reading it carefully, Changqing's eyes flashed. Especially this passively triggered mental attack, which can definitely catch the enemy off guard in actual combat. Not bad. He raised his hand to close the system panel and exclaimed in admiration from the bottom of his heart. "Thank you, master." The ghost moth walked closer and bowed. However, when she bent down, the full curve of her chest was immediately visible to Changqing. The turbulent curves made his sight freeze unconsciously. It was not until the ghost moth stood up again that Changqing looked away with a lingering look. "Master, this is tonight's harvest." Gue moth flipped his wrist slightly and respectfully presented the 2 storage rings. One gold ring is extraordinarily elegant, while the other black ring is as dark as ink. It was obtained from Crown Prince Chu Jingyan and Wu Xiao. Well, let's go back first. Changqing raised his hand, and 2 storage rings suddenly fell into his palm. On the side, the ghost moth's body expanded rapidly and turned into a green-winged eagle in the blink of an eye. As Changqing jumped onto the eagle's back, the ghost moth suddenly flapped its wings and flew up, rushing towards the direction of the imperial capital. After tonight, the court of the Great Yong dynasty will probably change. Changqing's robe rustled in the night wind. He gazed at the imperial capital in the distance and whispered, but he knew in his heart that even though Crown Prince Chu Jingyan had died, the court officials who were part of his faction were still a huge hidden danger. If this group of people were allowed to defect to other princes, it would add many variables to the 6th prince's path to succession. Of course, not everyone needs to be eliminated. As long as those with the Mosei are killed, a deterrent effect can be created. Next, it's time to deal with the remaining troubles. Thinking of this, a cold light flashed in Changqing's eyes, and he immediately took out a sound transmission talisman and ignited it at his fingertips. Pass the order down. All members of the Darkblade team on standby. Start hunting immediately. As the talisman burned out, Changqing's cold voice instantly reached Fang Baiyu. At the same time, the assassins from the Tianji Pavilion lurking in various places in the imperial capital began to take action. A silent, bloody storm is sweeping across the darkness of the city. After doing all this, Changqing finally had time to relax and began to check the 2 storage rings he had obtained. He first probed his mental power into the prince's gold-patterned ring, and suddenly his eyes became clear. All kinds of rare treasures were neatly displayed in the storage space inside. On the left were boxes of top-grade spirit stones and countless gold and silver jewelry. On the right side, there are piles of various treasures. The level of luxury is astonishing. As expected of a prince, his private property is indeed quite impressive. Changqing's eyes flickered. Even though he had experience in plundering several times in the past, he couldn't help but be shocked by the enormous wealth at this moment. For Changqing, this unexpected fortune was like pie in the sky. The last time he created the blood spirit, he had already used up all his family fortune. If he didn't gain anything else, he would probably have a hard time making any progress. Fortunately, the prince's private property is just what you need in times of need. After a search, Changqing found a secret letter wrapped in animal skin in the storage space. It contains densely packed evidence and evidence of bribery against officials from the 6 ministries in the court, and even details which people can be used and which ones need to be silenced. Moreover, the 3 words Tianji Pavilion were also included in the secret letter and were marked with a red circle. At the bottom of the red circle, there was a line of words written. This killer organization knows too many secrets. I will eliminate them after I ascend to the throne. When Changqing saw this, there was no trace of emotion in his eyes. In everything, it is best to take action first, which is the best strategy. Now that the 2 hidden dangers of the Crown Prince and Wu Xiao are gone, his Tianji Pavilion can rest easy within the territory of the Daong dynasty. He just needs to wait for the 6th prince to ascend the throne and then move on to develop his position. As long as we reach the territory of the Northern Wasteland, we will be able to thrive like a fish in water and no longer be bound by the shackles of imperial power. Wu Xiao is a remnant of the Blood Demon sect. Let's see what good things this old guy can leave behind. Afterwards, Changqing picked up the black storage ring and whispered to himself as his mental power quickly penetrated into it. As soon as Gu Changqing's mental power probed into the black storage ring, a dark space suddenly unfolded in his consciousness. Unlike the luxurious golden ring of the prince, Wuxiu's storage ring was full of eeriness and strangeness. Various debris were piled up in the corners, some from monsters, some obviously from humans, and the air was filled with a disgusting smell of decay. Although these are the necessary materials for refining talisman puppets, the scattered limbs and body parts still made Gu Changqing frown. Then his attention was quickly drawn to other things. Next to the corpse, there were dozens of monster pills piled up, with colorful halos flowing on the surface. Although it is not high level, it is also a rare resource. Gu Changqing's mind moved, and he directly put all these monster pills into the system space. Then, he continued to search in the storage ring. Perhaps because the martial art of refining talisman puppets is inherently extremely labor-intensive, Wuxiu's private property is not extensive. After a careful search, only more than 1,000 high-quality spirit stones were found. In addition, there are the Blood Evil Sect's inherited skills, all recorded in the form of jade slips and stored in a large box. The true scripture of puppet refining, the great method of transforming blood, the secret of devouring the body. Gu Changqing roughly scanned the jade slips and exercises in the box with his mental power and couldn't help but shake his head secretly. Most of these skills are tips on refining talisman puppets, or evil martial arts that suck the essence and blood of living people. He was obviously not interested in this. Just as Gu Changqing was about to withdraw his mental power, he suddenly detected a secret compartment at the bottom of the box. There actually was a scarlet jade slip hidden inside, with obscure runes engraved on its surface. Whoosh! Gu Changqing took it out immediately, and the moment his mental power penetrated, a huge amount of information flooded into his mind. The first thing that came into view was a detailed topographic map. The picture shows mountains, rivers, and a huge complex of buildings. Those buildings all have detailed markings of internal and external areas, even including the name of each hall and pavilion and the place for training. Blood Spirit Abyss, the core forbidden area for cultivation of the sect, which needs to be opened with the Blood Evil Sect token. 10,000 Puppets Tomb, a talisman puppet that suppresses the powerful men of the sect throughout the generations. Extremely dangerous. Soul Evil Tower condenses the evil energy of the earth veins and provides it for core disciples to practice. This is the overall layout of the Blood Demon sect. Gu Changqing's expression moved slightly, and he immediately became interested. I never thought that this jade slip contained such important confidential information. This is an unexpected gain. Gu Changqing's eyes sparkled, and he immediately studied the information inside carefully as if he had found a treasure. The ruins of the Blood Evil sect are located in the northern wilderness. In his opinion, the base of Tianji Pavilion will be moved there in the future. If they want to consolidate their foundation as soon as possible, this information is undoubtedly very critical. After a moment, Gu Changqing found an important clue: the Blood Evil Sect Protective Formation. Blood-eroded Sky Net Formation. Formation level, Spirit level upper grade. Characteristics of the formation, both offensive and defensive. The formation pattern contains the power of Blood Evil Erosion, which can not only resist various attacks and spiritual detection, but also counterattack the evil spirit to hurt the enemy. In addition, the Jade Slip also contains a note by Wuxiu. The core of the sect protection formation is hidden under the main peak. After being destroyed by the Martial Arts Alliance, the current formation pattern is about 60% intact and can still be repaired. Restoration materials. Top-grade blood marrow crystal. Replaces the core of the array I and can start the array pattern running again. Shinine iron. Used to repair defects in the main body of the array base. The required amount is about 10,000 gene. Netherworld sand. Used as the medium for the array I. 50 kilograms are required. It seems that Wuxiu has never given up the idea of reviving the sect. Gu Changqing whispered thoughtfully. Otherwise, why bother recording this? It really gave me a good bargain. The corners of his lips slightly raised as he looked at the jade slip in his hand, a hint of surprise flashing in his eyes. With this detailed information guide, you can at least save a lot of energy. As for collecting restoration materials, it's just a matter of time. Master, we're here. At this moment, the voice of Gue Moth suddenly sounded, interrupting Gu Changqing's thoughts. Afterwards, the ghost moth folded its wings and slowly landed on the roof of Ziyun Tower. Gu Changqing leaped up, walked to the edge of the roof, and stood there, overlooking the street scene below. The usually bustling streets now had their doors shut tightly, and pedestrians on the street looked frightened and hurriedly avoided the dangers. Instead, they were replaced by fully armed Imperial guards, wearing iron armor and holding long spears, marching in formation through the streets. For a moment, a murderous atmosphere filled the night, covering the entire Imperial capital. Next, it depends on how the sixth prince will finish it. Gu Changqing stood with his hands behind his back, looking deeply in the direction of the Imperial city with a calm tone. He knew better than anyone that Chu Linyuan had the secret guidance of the residual soul in the ancient ring. If there were no unexpected changes, the change of Imperial power tonight would be a sure thing. And now all I have to do is wait for good news. The next morning, in a lobby on the top floor of Ziyun Tower, Gu Changqing was closing his eyes and regulating his breathing when suddenly a noise came from outside the window. Duh, duh, duh. The uniform sound of iron hooves came from far away and rolled across the long bluestone street like thunder. I saw a team of black-armored Imperial guards suddenly stop in front of the Ziyun Tower, ready for battle. It's the Imperial city's royal guards. The killers in the building looked slightly stern and became alert in an instant. In a flash of cold light, daggers were already in hand. Don't act rashly. Fong Baiyu's eyes narrowed, and he quickly raised his hand to stop them. They should be the sixth prince's men. After hearing this, the coldness in the killer's eyes gradually faded. They then picked up the rag and disguised themselves as ordinary shop assistants again. Is Mr. Gu here? The leading black-armored guard stepped into the store, holding the hilt of his knife, and asked in a deep voice, "Sir, what can I do for you?" Meng Jing, dressed in shopkeeper's attire, walked up quickly with a smile on his face and asked tentatively, "The sixth prince urgently summoned me to the palace." The black-armored guard swept his sharp eyes over Meng Jing and said in a deep voice. Meng Jing turned his head slightly and exchanged subtle glances with Fong Baiyu and others. Although the other party claimed to be sent by the sixth prince, they still had to be more cautious. Wait a moment. Fong Baiyu did not take out the sound transmission talisman, but turned around and walked towards the stairs. However, at this moment, a black figure had appeared at the stairs on the second floor. This person was wearing a black robe and a white mask on his face. It was Gu Changqing. "Boss." Fong Baiyu paused when he saw this and said in a low voice, "They're sent by the sixth prince, and they want to summon you to the palace." Gu Changqing responded indifferently and walked down the stairs. The assassins in the hall bowed one after another. Although they said nothing, their eyes were full of awe. "Are you Mr. Gu?" The black-armored guard turned his gaze and stopped at Gu Changqing, looking him over. "Go back and report it." Gu Changqing said calmly, "If the sixth prince is sincere, he can come here in person." Although he had dealt with Wu Xiao and the crown prince, he was not sure whether Chu Linyuan was truly in control of the government now. Even if the situation was under control, it was not safe for him to go to the palace this time. You can know a person's face, but not his heart. If there is any fraud, it would be like walking into a tiger's den. And in the Ziyun Tower, even if something unexpected happens, at least there are the killers from the Tianji Pavilion to cover us. Although the advantage is not big, we can still advance and retreat together. Presumptuous! The black-armored guard frowned and shouted angrily, "It is a great honor for His Highness the Sixth Prince to summon you to the palace. How dare you ask His Highness to condescend to come here? Who do you think you are?" Gu Changqing's expression remained calm, and he said indifferently, "You can roar here, but if it becomes embarrassing, who do you think the Sixth Prince will punish first?" Before he finished speaking, The black-armored guard's expression suddenly froze. He suddenly remembered his boss's instructions before he left. Be sure to be courteous and don't act rashly. Thinking of this, the anger on the black-armored guard's face suddenly disappeared, and a hint of hesitation flashed in his eyes. Okay, I'll report it right away. He gritted his teeth and stared at Changqing, his voice cold and hard. I want to see if His Highness can tolerate your arrogance. After saying this, the black-armored guard snorted angrily and immediately turned and left. Boss, what do you mean? Seeing the other party leave, Fang Baiyu couldn't help but ask. Nothing, Changqing said calmly. If he's really sent by the Sixth Prince, this is a good opportunity to test his attitude. Oh, Fang Baiyu stared at Changqing with puzzled eyes. The relationship between the Sixth Prince and I is just a partnership, not a monarch-subject relationship. Changqing looked calm and said meaningfully, if he is sincere, he will come to your house in person. If that's not the intention, everyone knows it. Hearing this, Fang Baiyu's eyes darkened and he nodded thoughtfully. The boss is still far-sighted. Zhao Rong walked over slowly and said solemnly, no matter what the result is, we must be prepared for both situations. How about notifying those lurking in the palace right now? No need, Changqing interrupted and said slowly. Although Chu Linyuan is scheming, he would not make such a low-level mistake. After saying this, he turned around and walked to the stairs without saying anything more, and climbed up to the hall on the top floor of the pavilion. At the same time, inside the Changqing Hall of the Imperial Palace, Chu Linyuan stood quietly beside the bed, staring at the pale and thin old emperor, his eyes full of complexion. I summon the prince. Why are you here? Lying on the dragon couch, the old emperor half closed his eyes and questioned in a weak voice. Father, the prince will not come. Chu Linyuan's tone was calm, but there was an imperceptible chill in it. What do you mean? The old emperor's face suddenly changed, and a hint of doubt flashed in his turbid eyes. Isn't it what father wants to see when brothers kill each other? Chu Linyuan chuckled, his voice full of sarcasm. Cole. The old emperor suddenly shouted angrily, as if he had a last burst of energy, and he actually struggled to stand up. Kneel down for me. After a moment of silence, Chu Linyuan slowly knelt down. Tell me, what did you do to my prince? The old emperor's eyes were bloodshot as he glared at Chu Linyuan, who was kneeling in front of the bed, and an ominous premonition arose in his heart. From the day the crown prince was appointed as the heir to the throne, Chu Linyuan lowered his head, his voice gradually sinking. Father used us princes as his whetstone. My second brother died tragically in prison, and my fourth brother was demoted to a commoner. Now it's your turn. At this point, he raised his head suddenly, his eyes burning with anger that had been suppressed for many years. But, Father, have you ever thought that although we are his whetstones, we are also your own flesh and blood? Hearing this, the old emperor's lips trembled and he could not utter a word. Pity. Chu Linyuan suddenly laughed. Father, you have made all kinds of calculations, but you forgot that if the whetstone is too hard, it can break the blade. As he spoke, he took out a blood-stained black python robe from his storage ring and said in a low voice, Father, do you know who this belongs to? The moment he saw the dragon robe, the old emperor's pupils trembled and he suddenly started coughing violently. Rebellious son, how dare you, you dare. That's right. Chu Linyuan still knelt straight. His eyes were terrifyingly calm. The prince is dead. Last night, I also eliminated the restless forces in the court. The old emperor grasped the dragon robe tightly with trembling fingers, his eyes full of grief. Why? He muttered to himself, his voice hoarse and weak. He originally wanted to clear all obstacles for the crown prince, and was even willing to use other princes as whetstones to hone the crown prince's imperial mentality. Who would have thought that after years of planning, it would be completely overturned by the most unexpected chess piece at the end of the game? My father taught me that the way of an emperor is to make decisions when necessary. Chu Linyuan stood up suddenly and said in a cold voice, Now the great Yong dynasty should be ruled by your son. Good, very good. The old emperor's haggard face turned red. He tried to stand up, but suddenly spat out blood and rage. The next moment, he completely lost his life and fell heavily back onto the dragon couch. The dragon robe that symbolized the crown prince's position slowly slipped from his loosened, withered hands. Chu Linyuan stood quietly, looking at the old emperor who had died with his eyes open. He thought he would not react at all, but at this moment, 2 lines of tears flowed out uncontrollably. Father! Chu Linyuan's deep voice seemed to be suppressing some emotions that he couldn't express. I, your son, have finally come to this point. He slowly bent his knees and knelt in front of the bed again. He stroked the corpse's face with his trembling hands and closed its eyes. My condolences. The remnant soul of stone old man in the ancient ring sighed softly and then said nothing more. In the silent hall, the candlelight flickered. When Chu Linyuan stood up again, his face had become a little more stern. Someone come. He raised his hand to wipe away the remaining tears from the corners of his eyes and said in a cold voice. The palace door opened, and the commander of the Imperial Guards, who had been waiting for a long time, stepped in and knelt on one knee. Your Highness, what can I do for you? His Majesty has passed away. Chu Linyuan spoke calmly, as if the fragility he felt just now had never existed. Pass the order down and hold a funeral according to the imperial rites. Yes, sir. The commander of the Imperial Guards bowed his head and accepted the order, but he couldn't help but raise his eyes slightly, glanced at the old emperor on the bed, and hurriedly got up and left. Whoosh! At this time, a talisman flew out from Chu Linyuan's storage ring. Your Highness, the owner of Xinlu refuses to come to the palace for an audience and wants you to come in person. The moment the sound transmission note was lit, a trembling voice suddenly rang out. Hearing this, Chu Linyuan's face darkened slightly, and the coldness in his eyes disappeared in an instant. Gu Changqing is quite scheming. He actually wants to use this to test my attitude. He narrowed his eyes slightly and said coldly, in this case, I will do as he wishes. Before he finished speaking, Chu Linyuan had already stepped out of the hall. Each step was steady and powerful, already full of imperial majesty. Yes, being able to keep calm is the way of an emperor. The voice of approval from old Shi came from the ring, and he was secretly pleased with Chu Linyuan's growth after this incident. He knew very well that Gu Changqing was able to get rid of the prince, and he must have some means that should not be underestimated. Even if you can't make friends with them, you must never offend them. At noon, Zueyun Tower. A luxurious black carriage with gold patterns, surrounded by many guards, slowly stopped in front of the building gate. Your Highness, we have arrived at Zeyun Tower. The commander of the guards reminded respectfully and gently lifted the brocade curtain. Chu Linyuan got out of the car and looked up at the plaque of Zeyun Tower with a deep gaze. Waiting outside, after giving the indifferent order, he walked into the store alone. In the lobby, the assassins disguised as shop assistants paused and glanced at the 6th prince who was about to ascend the throne. Meng Jing walked out slowly from behind the counter and clasped his fists in greeting. Your Highness, the 6th prince has come in person, and Zueyun Tower is honored. His tone was respectful, but he did not bow. Is Mr. Gu here? Chu Linyuan's voice was indifferent, and his expression was difficult to tell whether he was angry or happy. The boss is on the top floor of the building. Please follow me. Meng Jing smiled slightly, turned around, and led the way. As Chu Linyuan stepped onto the stairs, his eyes casually swept over everyone in the hall. In this imperial city, no matter whether as princes, ministers, or peddlers, they all bowed down and fawn when they see him. Only in Zeyun Tower, everyone from the shopkeeper to the waiter had an indescribable feeling. That neither humble nor arrogant attitude was as if he was welcoming an ordinary guest, not the emperor who was about to ascend the throne. At this time, in the hall on the top floor of the pavilion, Gu Changqing was dressed in white, sitting at the table, brewing tea leisurely. Crunch! The door was pushed open, and Meng Jing stepped aside to make way. 6th Prince, please come in. Chu Linyuan stepped into the hall, and his eyes fell on Gu Changqing. Gu Changqing did not stand up, but raised his hand to pour a cup of tea, pushed it across the table, and said lightly, "Your Highness the Sixth Prince is willing to condescend to come here. It is Gu who is rude. Brother Gu helped me accomplish this, so I should come to thank him in person." Chu Lin Yuan lifted his robe and sat down. He picked up the teacup and sniffed the tea. He said sincerely, "If you hadn't taken action last night, we might not have been able to catch all the prince's followers. It's just what each of us needs." Gu Changqing smiled faintly and got straight to the point. "Your Highness is now in charge of Daong. Is it time to fulfill your promise?" Chu Lin Yuan put down the teacup, then took out a roll of bright yellow silk, placed it on the table, and slowly unfolded it. "This is actually a blank imperial edict with a jade seal on it. Brother Gu, you can write down whatever you want." As he spoke, he pushed the imperial edict towards Gu Changqing and said meaningfully, "Title, fief, wealth, even military power, all are negotiable." The hall fell into a subtle silence. Gu Changqing stared at the blank imperial edict, which on the surface granted financial power, but in fact it contained a deeper meaning. But does this suspicion make sense? Gu Changqing sneered in his heart. If he really has that idea, he has plenty of ways to do it. Chu Lin Yuan stared at Gu Changqing calmly, trying to catch a trace of fluctuation in his expression. His move was indeed intended to test, but it was more out of fear. In his opinion, Gu Changqing did his best to help him get to the top. Was it just to get that piece of wasteland? Is it true that none of them covets other power and position? I don't ask for much. Gu Changqing broke the silence, his tone calm and direct. According to the previous agreement, I only need to designate the northern wasteland as my fiefdom, and it must be completely autonomous, without interference from the royal power. After saying this, he turned his wrist slightly, took out the half-tiger talisman from the system storage space, and pressed it firmly on the imperial edict. Is this a tiger talisman? Chu Lin Yuan's eyes were burning, and he almost couldn't help reaching out to grab it, but he quickly suppressed the restlessness in his heart. Although he has now calmed the situation in the court, undercurrents are still surging. If he fails to seize military power, it will still be difficult for him to sit firmly on the throne. And this half-tiger talisman is undoubtedly the key item. I have done what I promised you. Gu Changqing looked indifferent, staring at Chu Lin Yuan and said, "Now, it's your turn." Brother Gu is indeed very powerful. Chu Lin Yuan exclaimed in admiration, and then said nothing more. He took out an ink pen and wrote on the blank imperial edict. "The Emperor, by the mandate of heaven, proclaims, I have received the mandate of heaven and rule over the empire's territory. Today, Gu Changqing is specially granted the title of Lord of Northern Wilderness, with autonomous jurisdiction and independent military and political power. Except for the crime of treason, the imperial power shall not interfere. The Northern Wilderness collects its own taxes and manages its own military power, and the imperial court will never conscript them. All political orders, laws, and commercial matters within the fiefdom are to be decided independently by Gu Qing, and the imperial court is not allowed to interfere. If anyone violates this, Gu Qing can execute him first and report to you later." Gu Changqing took the imperial edict and scanned the neat handwriting on it. After a moment, he nodded slightly, with a satisfied arc at the corner of his lips. From this moment on, this vast wasteland will become his territory. Although it still nominally belongs to the territory of the Daong dynasty, due to the special clause of not being interfered with by imperial power, it is actually a country within a country. On the other hand, Chu Lin Yuan couldn't hide his excitement as he picked up the tiger talisman. After confirming it repeatedly in his hand, he put it into the storage ring. The two looked up at each other and smiled in tacit understanding. This cooperation can be said to be a win-win for both parties, and they have perfectly achieved the results that they most wanted. "When do you plan to leave, Brother Gu?" Chu Lin Yuan couldn't help but ask. Gu Changqing said without hesitation, "Anytime. 10 days from now, it will be the coronation ceremony." "Why not?" Before Chu Lin Yuan finished speaking, Gu Changqing interrupted him. "No need. I have never liked crowds. Your Majesty, please forgive me." Chu Lin Yuan was startled by the address of Your Majesty, and then he smiled knowingly. In that case, so be it. Chu Linyuan suddenly stood up, looked at Gu Changqing, and said meaningfully, although the northern wasteland is Brother Gu's fiefdom, it is still the territory of Daong after all. We will stick together from now on. If the dynasty is in trouble, I hope Brother Gu will share my worries. He knew very well that he was still inexperienced at the moment, and although he was wary of Gu Changqing, he had to rely on him. Only by taking advantage of its power can we truly take control of the Daong dynasty and even expand the territory. Your Majesty, there is no need to say more. If necessary, I will do my best. Gu Changqing looked calm and said calmly, it's just that water can carry a boat, but can also overturn it. You still need to think more about how to govern a country. Chu Linyuan's eyes flickered when he heard this, and he murmured in a low voice, water can carry a boat, but can also capsize it. After a moment of hesitation, his brows relaxed. Thank you, Brother Gu, for your advice. The affairs of the court are very complicated at the moment, so I will take my leave first. No. Gu Changqing stared at the other person's departing back, sipping tea, thinking about something in his heart. After experiencing this incident, he clearly felt that Chu Linyuan's temperament seemed to have changed a lot. He was totally different from the simple and cheerful person he was when they first met. Now, his every move and gesture showed a bit of imperial scheming and vigilance. Gu Changqing didn't care too much about this. If Chu Linyuan behaves himself and does not cross his bottom line, both sides will naturally be at peace. On the contrary, there is no need to talk about any friendship. You can help him get to the top, or you can get him out of office. Mr. Shi, how do you think I did this time? Inside the carriage, Chu Linyuan stared at the slowly condensing shadow of the residual soul in front of him, with a hint of complacency between his brows. The shadow gradually solidified and turned into the image of an old man with white hair and a youthful face. Don't forget your roots. Old Shi sighed and said earnestly, this is what you promised Gu Changqing. Why you say how? Hearing this, Chu Linyuan's expression froze, and he nodded slightly. Old Shi is right. Yuaner will remember your teachings. At this moment, facing Master Shi, he seemed like a fledgling apprentice, humbly accepting instruction. However, it is wise for you to choose to make friends with Gu Changqing. Shi Lao said solemnly. Your foundation is not stable now. Unless it is necessary, you must be cautious in everything you do. Of course, I only used a piece of wasteland to exchange for the tiger talisman that holds military power. Chu Linyuan raised the corner of his mouth slightly and said seriously, this deal is not a loss. Don't be careless. Shi Lao's voice suddenly sank. I have always felt that this boy is not a simple person, so why would he care about a mere military token? Chu Linyuan frowned slightly, his tone full of confusion. What is his purpose? After a moment of silence, Old Shi slowly said, this person's style of doing things is hard to predict. We can only wait and see what he intends to do when he goes to the northern wasteland in the future. Hearing this, Chu Linyuan nodded thoughtfully. Little did they know, when that day finally came, Gu Changqing had already become the lord of the northern wilderness of that fiefdom, leaving him far behind. Boss, is it done? A surprised voice was heard in the lobby on the top floor of Ziyun Tower. The three core members, Feng Baiyu, Zhao Rong, and Meng Jing, have gathered here with burning eyes. Seeing Gu Changqing nod indifferently, their eyes suddenly sparkled, and they could not hide their excitement on their faces. Back then, when they followed their boss, they could only live in a small clinic. It is unimaginable that after so much development, they have already owned a territory. From today on, this Ziyun Tower will serve as the hub of the Great Yong Dynasty's intelligence network and will operate as usual. Gu Changqing looked around at the three people, his voice calm but unquestionable. I will give you 7 days to prepare, then follow me north to the wilderness. Yes, boss. Feng Baiyu and the others nodded respectfully, then turned and left, each taking quick action. In the hall, Gu Changqing sat in the main seat, secretly thinking about the next plan. 3 months later, the martial arts tournament will be held. Since he had already promised Elder Sun, he would certainly not go back on his word. However, this trip to the northern wilderness will inevitably be full of miscellaneous tasks, and it will be difficult to concentrate on cultivation. Taking advantage of this period of time, I can use the training ground of Changqing Mansion to improve my strength as soon as possible. Thinking of this, Changqing had already made up his mind and immediately got up and left Ziyun Tower. When Changqing arrived at the Changqing Mansion in the afterglow of the setting sun, he saw that the entire mansion was shrouded in a layer of light golden formation light curtain. Junior brother Gu, it feels like a long time since we last met. The fat deacon guarding the gate looked at him intently, then immediately came forward with a smile on his face. Do you want to visit Elder Son again this time? He rubbed his fat hands together and grinned. The 10 kilograms of ice python meat you gave me last time, wow. The taste was simply unforgettable. The implication is that he just wants to get some benefits. After all, if you want to ask someone to do something for you, you can always use some social etiquette, right? The fat deacon's eyes unconsciously glanced at the storage ring in Changqing's hand. Seeing that he was going to take something, his brows immediately lit up with joy. But the next second, his smile suddenly froze. Because what appeared in Changqing's hand at this time was not the coveted monster meat, but a black iron token. The complicated runes on the token were glowing, with 2 large golden characters engraved in the center. Special free. Special exemption order? The fat deacon widened his eyes and stared at Changqing in disbelief. As a steward of the Wu Mansion, he knew too well the importance of this token. Those who hold this order can not only move freely in the Wu Mansion, but also enjoy priority use of all training venues. Elder Son actually gave all this to you? The fat deacon's voice suddenly became hoarse, and there was a hint of jealousy in his tone. He had been in the palace for 6 years, guarding the mountain gate every day, rain or shine, working diligently. But in the end, he did not receive as good treatment as a mere registered disciple. How can one not be jealous? Changqing turned the token lightly with his fingertips and said with a faint smile, Now, can I go in? Of course. The fat deacon came back to his senses from his shock and immediately took out a jade token. Buzz! As the jade token vibrated, a dazzling green light shot out. The next moment, the pale golden light curtain covering the Wu Mansion rippled like water waves, slowly splitting open a passage about 10 feet wide. Changqing clasped his fists and bowed, then walked in calmly like the wind. However, just as he passed through the light curtain and rushed into the mansion, several sounds of breaking through the air suddenly rang out. Stop now. Before he finished his words, 5 figures in black deacon robes rushed over, surrounded Changqing. Their sharp eyes scanned Changqing again. Seeing that the latter was holding a special exemption order, his alert look gradually disappeared. What's more, the last time Changqing came to Wu Mansion, it was the captain of the stewards, Mo Tianxing, who led the way personally, so he was not unfamiliar with the place. Brother Gu, why are you here today? The middle-aged deacon in the lead asked as a matter of routine. Excuse me, fellow deacons. I want to go to Jianshao Pavilion's sword pool for trial. Can you give me some convenience? Changqing smiled slightly, his tone polite, without being arrogant. No problem. With a special exemption order, everything will take priority. The middle-aged deacon's eyes flashed with approval, and he said, I'll take you there. After saying this, he turned around quickly and took the initiative to lead the way. Thank you very much. Changqing pursed his lips slightly and immediately followed. When he assassinated Yang Zhao before, although he already knew the exact location of the sword pool, it would naturally be better to have someone lead the way. The middle-aged deacon kept walking, and suddenly a sound transmission note ignited between his fingers, and he said in a low voice, There is a disciple in the mansion who holds a special exemption order and is heading to the sword pond for the trial. Clear the area immediately. Hearing this, Changqing raised his eyebrows slightly and couldn't help but re-examine the value of the special exemption order in his hand. It was almost comparable to the treatment of a senior member. Before he arrived, he had already notified people to clear the area. Such privileges are truly extraordinary. However, at this moment, the inner courtyard area of Jianshao Pavilion was quietly experiencing a rare commotion. The source of this was a sudden piece of news that an unknown disciple had obtained a special exemption and was about to come to the sword pool for trial. Of course, what these Jianshao Pavilion disciples care about most is that they will have to clear the area as soon as this person arrives. This kind of thing undoubtedly made many disciples feel dissatisfied. Although I know the priority of the special exemption order, I still feel unhappy. In just a short moment, more and more people gathered in the outer area of the sword pool. They want to see who can get this preferential treatment. The inner courtyard of Jianshao Pavilion. Two figures, one in front and one behind, went straight towards the direction of the sword pool. Brother Steward, this is my first time practicing in the sword pond. What should I pay attention to? Changqing paused and asked curiously. No need to pay special attention to anything, as long as your cultivation reaches the Daofan realm or above. The middle-aged deacon said calmly. After entering the sword pool, you can draw the sword energy in the pool to temper your body. It will not only strengthen your muscles and bones, but also help you comprehend the sword's meaning. Changqing's eyes flickered slightly, and he felt a little relieved. His current cultivation level has reached the early stage of Yuandan realm, so this condition is naturally met. But the middle-aged deacon suddenly stopped and seemed to be hesitant to speak. Changqing raised his eyebrows and smiled. You can say it anyway. The middle-aged deacon gave him a meaningful look and said, the sword pond is the most precious place of Jianshao Pavilion. The number of places for cultivation has always been in short supply. You need to make a reservation 3 months in advance before you can enter to practice. You hold a special exemption order, so you can directly enter the sword pool to practice, but those disciples who were originally scheduled to practice today may not be able to cope with it. At this point, the corners of his lips slightly raised, so when we get to the sword pond later, it's best to keep a low profile and not provoke them. Hearing this, Changqing was slightly stunned, and then he understood. If you were waiting for months for a place to practice and someone suddenly cut in line, you would probably find it difficult to remain calm. Of course, you don't have to be so reserved, the middle-aged deacon said indifferently. According to the prefecture rules, anyone who holds a special exemption order should enjoy the privileges, and no disciple may obstruct him. Chang nodded silently, but he was mentally prepared. What's more, with this deacon accompanying them now, even if the disciples of Jianshao Pavilion are dissatisfied, they will never dare to act rashly. As his mind raced, Changqing finally understood the profound meaning of the special exemption order given to him by Elder's son. Not to mention that he is not a formal disciple of the 7 profound martial arts house now. Even if he follows the normal procedure to make an appointment to practice in the sword pool, it is unknown when he will be able to do so. At this time, the area outside the sword pool was already crowded with people, and it seemed particularly lively. These inner disciples of Jianshao Pavilion, dressed in uniform, were all in high spirits and full of vigor. Why hasn't that person come yet? Could he be a disciple from another palace? If that's the case, why did you dare to cut in line at Jianshao Pavilion without informing us in advance? Who cares who he is? When we meet later, I will definitely ask him for an explanation. At this moment, a cold snort sounded, and everyone's eyes turned to the person who spoke last. The long-haired young man had a stern face, anger in his eyes, and an expression as ugly as if he had eaten shit. Brother Qingming, don't be angry. No one expected this. Seeing this, the disciples of Jianshao Pavilion couldn't help but persuade him. They naturally understood why Qingming was so angry. The moonlight sword style practiced by this sword genius had relatively harsh conditions and could only be practiced in conjunction with the cold current in the sword pool when the moon was full. And today is the night of the full moon. If you miss it, you will have to wait for several more months to reserve a place in the sword pool trial. Didn't expect that? Qingming's face was gloomy, and he sneered. That's why I want to ask him for an explanation. Although there were government regulations in place, he still found it hard to accept such a tyranny of resources. Privileges? Rules? Screw them. Today's matter is not over yet. Whoosh! Whoosh! Just as everyone was looking forward to it, suddenly there was a sound of breaking wind in the distance. Then, two figures were seen rushing over and arrived at this area in the blink of an eye. These two people are the middle-aged deacon and Gu Changqing. As soon as he stood firm, Gu Changqing clearly sensed the unusual atmosphere in the field. He was not at all surprised by this. Gu Changqing also knew clearly that with his peripheral status as a nominal disciple and his special exemption order to join the training, it would be impossible for him to convince others. Especially for those inner disciples who had waited in line for a long time to get a chance to practice today, the dissatisfaction in their eyes was almost turning into reality. Huh, why is it him? In the crowd, several disciples who had participated in the Tianyan secret realm had their pupils shrink suddenly and look surprised. Thinking back to the previous secret realm quota, Gu Changqing was able to be the substitute. So the person with this special exemption order is most likely him. Are you the one who is going to come to the sword pond to practice today? Qi Ming was the first one who couldn't bear it anymore. He stepped forward and asked with a frown. His eyes swept back and forth over Gu Changqing with obvious scrutiny. Yes, that's me. Gu Changqing smiled calmly and said, Sorry for bothering you. Qi Ming smiled and said meaningfully, Although I don't know how you got the exemption order, but with your current qualifications, I'm afraid you can't afford this privilege. So senior brother suggests that you follow the process to reserve a place in the sword pond for training, which may be better for you. These words immediately resonated with the disciples of Jianshao Pavilion present. Why should I, a mere registered disciple with neither a distinguished status nor profound qualifications, enjoy such privileges? Gu Changqing looked calm, and his tone was neither humble nor arrogant. Is it because you don't have the ability or the qualifications? Qi Ming narrowed his eyes and sneered. Since you insist on asking so clearly, then I can only say that you have both. Hearing this, Gu Changqing's eyes turned cold, and he already understood the other party's implication. If the other party really needs a place to practice today and is sincere and explains the reason, he might consider giving in. After all, there are more than one sword pond in the Kixwama Mansion's training venues, so one could choose to practice somewhere else. But as soon as this guy came up, he was tit for tat and acted superior. If I give in again, I will be treated as a soft persimmon that can be bullied at will. Gu Changqing naturally couldn't handle this. Qi Ming, this is the rule of the mansion, don't say anything. The middle-aged deacon's eyes narrowed, and he warned in a stern tone. Brother Deacon, please don't misunderstand me. Qi Ming smiled playfully, but his tone became more aggressive. I am just kindly reminding this junior brother that the way of cultivation requires gradual progress, and more importantly, the distinction between the noble and the humble. As he spoke, he turned his gaze to Gu Changqing, his eyes even more teasing. What do you think? However, Gu Changqing suddenly laughed. That smile made Qi Ming's heart inexplicably tight. In terms of qualifications, I am indeed not qualified enough. He stared at Qi Ming with deep eyes and said calmly, But when it comes to strength, it's not just talk. Oh, Qi Ming raised his eyebrows and said provocatively, If that's the case, do you dare to fight me? If you beat me, I will never say no to your suggestion about today's training spot in the sword pond. If you lose to me, then go back to where you came from. How about that? As soon as he finished speaking, Qi Ming's vital energy surged, and suddenly a sharp energy wave burst out and swept away. Such an action is undoubtedly obvious. The middle-aged deacon was about to speak out to stop them, but was stopped by the deacon who was guarding the sword pool next to him. The two sides looked at each other and nodded in tacit understanding. They knew clearly that Qi Ming was clearly not reconciled to what happened today, and the other inner disciples present were also feeling aggrieved. The only way to resolve the conflict is not complicated, just fight. Regardless of winning or losing, if Gu Changqing still insists on practicing in the sword pool, he will still have priority privileges. The key point is that the middle-aged deacon and others are also quite curious. What kind of ability does Gu Changqing have that makes Elder Sun favor him so much? We will find out whether he is a fool or not soon. It's going to be a good show. Seeing Qin Ming taking the initiative to challenge Gu Changqing, the disciples of Jianshao Pavilion immediately looked at him with burning eyes. In an instant, everyone stepped back like a crowd of spectators, leaving a clear space. Gu Changqing looked indifferent and stood there motionless. What's wrong? Is Junior Brother Gu afraid? Qin Ming stared at Gu Changqing with a playful look and continued to provoke. It seems that the registered disciple that Elder Sun has chosen is just so-so. He knew very well in his mind that he must not take the initiative to attack unless he provokes Gu Changqing to accept the challenge. Then he would have a legitimate reason to attack. Otherwise, even if he defeated Gu Changqing, he would still be punished according to the rules of the mansion. Gu Changqing raised his eyes and glanced at Qin Ming lightly. How could he not see the other party's tricks? But at this moment, the initiative is completely in his hands. TSK Tisk, it's just a name. Qin Ming shook his head and continued to provoke Gu Changqing with words. With just this little courage, you still want to cut in line at Jianshao Pavilion. How shameless. That's right. Only resources earned through strength can be considered real skills. The disciples of Jianshao Pavilion in the field side at the right time, their tone full of contempt. Seeing that Gu Changqing still didn't respond, he said in a colder voice, "Since you are a registered disciple, I won't bully you. It only takes 10 moves. If you are still undefeated, I, Qin Ming, will not say another word about the sword pool training. Do you dare to accept it?" Qin Ming's sharp voice rapped in powerful Yuanli. Every word resounded powerfully in the venue. 10 rounds. This is the biggest concession. One is in the early Yuanan realm, and the other is in the peak Yuanan realm. If two people at the same level really want to compete, the chances of winning within 10 moves are difficult to estimate. However, just when everyone thought they had succeeded, Gu Changqing remained deaf to the idea. Then, in front of everyone's stunned gaze, he turned to the middle-aged deacon and asked, "According to the prefectural rules, if you hold a special exemption order, do you still need to accept a challenge before you can enter the sword pool?" Hearing this, the middle-aged deacon was startled and quickly responded, "There is no such rule. In that case, let's follow the rules." Gu Changqing looked calm and said calmly, "As for the others, I hope the deacon brother can handle it." After saying this, a meaningful smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. "Do you think I'm stupid for not using my privileges? Whoever wants to jump out and dance, just jump here as much as you want." A trace of surprise flashed across the middle-aged deacon's eyes, but he immediately reacted and shouted at Qin Ming, "Qin Ming, if you disrupt order again, I'll see you in the law enforcement hall." Hearing this, Qin Ming's face instantly turned pale, and he stared at Gu Changqing. He never expected that this guy would be so stubborn and completely ignore any provocation and ridicule. After all this trouble, it turns out that the clown is actually me. When Qin Ming heard the words law enforcement hall, he panicked and quickly restrained his energy and stepped aside to make way. Looking at the scene before them, the many Jianshao Pavilion disciples present looked at each other and stared at Gu Changqing in disbelief, and no one said another word. After all, no matter what, as long as they have the special exemption order in hand, no matter how they make a fuss, it is difficult to change the fact that the latter has priority access to the sword pool. "Junior Brother Gu, you can enter the sword pool now." The middle-aged deacon looked at Gu Changqing deeply and said calmly, "Thank you very much." Gu Changqing raised the corner of his mouth slightly and ignored the many hostile gazes around him. Then, he walked calmly through the crowd, without stopping, and headed towards the forbidden area of Jianxi. Faced with such courage, the disciples of Jianshao Pavilion, who were blocking the way, unconsciously retreated to both sides, not daring to block the way. At the same time, in the air, not far away, 3 figures were suspended. Their eyes were calm, all looking in the direction of the sword pool, taking in everything that had just happened. The man on the left is none other than the Kixuano Mansion's elder who teaches martial arts, Sun Tong. The burly man in black robe on the right is the leader of Jianshao Pavilion, Xiao Wuhan. The one in the middle of the two was an old man in a white robe. The old man's hair and beard were all white, and he looked decrepit, but the occasional cold light in his eyes showed that he was no ordinary person. And this old man in white robe is none other than the current lord of the Kixuanmo mansion, Jiang Yinshan. This kid's style of doing things is indeed always different from that of ordinary people. Sun Tong looked down at the scene below with a smile and said with satisfaction. Xiao Wuhan's eyes were stern, with chillness surging in them. He looked like he was disappointed with the performance of the disciples in the pavilion. Just a special exemption order scared them so much that they gave up fighting for resources. They really have no courage at all. Elder son, it seems that you think highly of Gu Changqing. Palace Master Jiang Yinshan stroked his beard lightly and smiled faintly. Reporting to the lord of the mansion, it is indeed so. Sun Tong bowed slightly, then paused and said, this boy's potential, talent, and character are all top-notch. If such a talented young man is properly nurtured, he will surely become a leader among the younger generation in the future. Even compared to those evildoers in Kanglan Martial Arts Academy, I may not be inferior. Hearing this, Jiang Yunshin's face was slightly moved, and he stroked his beard and smiled. There are not many young people who can be praised by you like this. But why is he still just a registered disciple? Sun Tong shook his head and smiled, his tone somewhat helpless. He failed the entrance examination. I can only say that it was his luck. Oh, Jiang Yunshin's eyes flickered slightly, and his gaze once again turned to the young figure not far below. It's really strange that he can't pass the test, even though his cultivation has reached the Yuandan realm. Xiao Wuhan's eyes narrowed, also staring at Gu Changqing's back, with a query in his voice. Sun Tong hesitated for a moment and said slowly, this little guy does have a lot of secrets. Of course, this has nothing to do with us. It's his personal opportunity. We can't speculate on it. Elder son is right. Jiang Yinshan nodded. Although he is a registered disciple, he is still a disciple of our 7th Xuanwu mansion. It is nothing more than an empty title. As long as he doesn't do anything harmful to the Wu mansion, everything is fine. As he said that, he looked at Sun Tong and Xiao Wuhan and asked with a smile, if these two little guys were to compete just now, who do you think would have a better chance of winning? Xiao Wuhan said calmly, there is no comparison between the early and peak stages of a Yuandan realm. Master Xiao, that may not be the case. Sun Tong smiled and said, in my opinion, Qin Ming will suffer a loss. He knew very well that it would be a big mistake to judge Gu Changqing's fighting ability based on appearance. Interesting. Jiang Yunshan raised his eyebrows and then said with interest, in a martial arts conference 3 months later, I want to see for myself what is so special about this little guy that you value so much. Gu Changqing walked slowly along the bluestone path and soon reached the end. Before my eyes was a pool of water as deep as ink, with tiny ripples forming on the surface of the water, even without any wind. If one looks closely, one can see that the ripples are mixed with traces of cold light and contain countless sword energies. Squeak, squeak, squeak. As soon as Gu Changqing stepped to the edge of the sword pool, his clothes were torn into several pieces. Even with his physical strength at the Yuandan realm, he could still feel waves of pain in his skin, as if he was being pierced by countless fine needles at the same time. Such a strong sword energy. Gu Changqing's pupils shrank slightly, and he immediately circulated the true energy in his body, forming a light blue protective shield on his body surface. The sword energy hit the shield, and it actually made a crisp ding-ding sound. With such a sharp sword energy, it is no wonder that only disciples who have reached the Daofan realm or above are qualified to enter this place. If someone with insufficient cultivation barges in rashly, he will probably be torn into a bloody mess in an instant. Gu Changqing took a deep breath and jumped into the sword pool without hesitation. Boom! The moment he fell into the water, countless sword energies rushed over like a group of sharks smelling blood and enveloped him in an instant. Gu Changqing's eyes sparkled with brilliance as the nine-layered sky-shaking secret began to circulate in his meridians. The protective true energy vibrated on the surface of his body layer by layer, directly resisting all the surrounding sword energy. He did not stop and rushed towards the center of the sword pool. As I went deeper, the water gradually reached my waist, and I suddenly felt a strange resistance. Gu Changqing discovered that the water in the sword pool was as heavy as lead. When he moved it casually, it seemed as if he was stirring solidified, thick slurry. Every movement required several times more effort than usual. What's even more terrifying is that as you go deeper into the bottom of the pool, the sword energy around you becomes more and more violent. The sharp edge hit the body's protective, true energy frantically, making a hissing sound, and it seemed that it could be torn apart at any time. At this depth, Gu Changqing could no longer continue, otherwise he would be in danger. Then he opened a crack in the energy shield and tried to draw a ray of sword energy in. Laugh! The moment the sword energy entered his body, Gu Changqing's whole body shook violently. It felt like a knife scraping his bones, and his meridians felt a sharp pain all over his body. But soon, the true energy flowing in his body quickly repaired the damaged veins. Gu Changqing continued to draw the sword energy into his body, suddenly sweeping through every inch of his meridians, and finally mobilized his true energy to repair it. Once, twice, 3 times, Gu Changqing gradually mastered the rhythm. He kept adjusting the size of the gap in his energy shield, allowing the sword energy to flow into his body with the most appropriate intensity. Each cycle of destruction and repair makes the meridian stronger. This cycle repeats itself over and over again, creating a tempering effect. Time passes by every second. Gu Changqing's consciousness completely entered an ethereal state of cultivation, without the slightest thought or perception. The process of sword energy entering the body and true essence being restored has formed a perfect cycle, which is even more efficient than when under conscious control. In this wonderful state of training, every inch of his muscles and every bone were being tempered by the sword energy. At the same time, the speed of the circulation of his true energy suddenly increased to the extreme, surging in his meridians. Afterwards, Gu Changqing suddenly removed the protective energy shield on his body, as if subconsciously, and the Yuandan in his dantian quickly rotated, actively absorbing the sword energy into his body. Boom! In an instant, the entire sword pool suddenly began to boil, and the water in the pool flowed violently, surrounding his body in layers, forming a whirlpool. The disciples outside the sword pond forbidden area were unable to see this mysterious scene. At this moment, 3 figures floating in the air not far away witnessed all of this. It has only been a short while since you entered the sword pond, and you have the guts to absorb the sword energy into your body without reservation. Seeing this, Jianshao Pavilion's pavilion master Xiao Wuhan shook his head and said, "Young people are still too impatient after all." Master Xiao, that may not be the case. Sun Tong took over the conversation with a smile and denied the other party's statement. "Oh, then please, elder son, explain the reason." Xiao Wuhan stood with his hands behind his back. Although he was asking questions, his cold eyes were always fixed on the figure in the sword pool. "I think Pavilion Master Xiao should have noticed that Gu Changqing has entered a state of ethereal cultivation," Sun Tong said slowly. In other words, he is now guiding the sword energy into his body without reservation, and it is a completely unconscious action. Ethereal state? Hearing this, Xiao Wuhan's eyes focused, and he immediately observed it carefully. Gu Changqing was seen in the center of the pool, with his Yuanli light swirling around him. Countless free sword energies were pouring into his body continuously with some mysterious rhythm, like rivers returning to the sea. However, Gu Changqing remained seated with his eyes closed, as if he had no perception, allowing the sword energy to penetrate his body unimpeded. In fact, because the sword energy was too dense, it condensed into a translucent cocoon outside his body. Sword chi turns into cocoon. Xiao Wuhan's eyes flickered slightly as he looked at the scene in disbelief. He discovered that the dense sword energy not only did not hurt Gu Changqing at all, but instead gathered on his body surface to form a cocoon-like protective shield. At this time, if someone attacked Gu Changqing, he would definitely suffer the horrific attack of this sword cocoon. Haha, Elder Son is right. This boy has entered a state of ethereal cultivation similar to sudden enlightenment. Palace Master Jiang Yinshan stroked his white beard and smiled slightly. However, in this state, there are two extremes. He paused and continued. If you practice in a normal environment, you can only make some progress, but there will be no danger at all. But if you can comprehend the mysteries of sword intent in a dangerous place like the sword pond, your cultivation will surely advance by leaps and bounds. Otherwise, the sword energy will backfire, your meridians will be severed, and your cultivation will be completely destroyed. Listening to the palace lord's explanation, Sun Tong nodded thoughtfully. In this case, it all depends on his luck. As he whispered to himself, a solemn look appeared on his old face. At this time, when the sword cocoon was completely formed, Gu Changqing had already reached a strange state of resonance with the sword. Every wisp of sword energy in the sword cocoon was subtly resonating with the Yuan Dan in his body, as if countless sharp swords were reforging his Yuan Dan. Jump! After an unknown amount of time, a clear sword sound suddenly came from a cocoon. In an instant, the originally still sword cocoon began to beat regularly like a heart. Bang! 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 The sword cocoon was beating faster and faster, and with a click, the surface of the sword cocoon was instantly covered with cracks. The moment the sword cocoon completely exploded, it suddenly turned into countless sword lights, interweaving into a dazzling sword wheel above Gu Changqing's head. Every time the sword wheel rotates, a pure sword intent is injected into the Yuan Dan in Gu Changqing's body. The Yuan Dan, which was originally covered with frost marks, gradually stretched and deformed as if it had been carefully carved. In the end, it turned into a smaller version of the sword, as crystal clear as jade, with ice blue frost patterns flowing on the sword body. The tip of the sword was pointing upwards, slowly rotating in the Dantian acupoint, filled with a heart-pounding cold sword energy. Yuan Dan turns into sword. Just as the Yuan Dan transformed into a sword body, Gu Changqing's ethereal consciousness returned to his body, and he suddenly opened his eyes. There was actually a tiny sword shadow flowing in those pupils, and wherever his gaze reached, the air seemed to be cut into tiny ripples. Boom! The next moment, his aura suddenly surged, and his cultivation soared from the early Yuandan realm. Middle stage of Yuandan realm. Late Yuandan realm. The peak of Yuandan realm. In a flash, he broke through 3 thresholds and finally stopped at the half-step Xian-Yin realm before slowly stagnating. When his cultivation reached this level, the true energy in Gu Changqing's body accelerated on its own, forming a surging river in his meridians. He actually broke through. Xiao Wuhan's pupils shrank slightly, and his hands behind his back clenched unconsciously. As the head of Jianshao Pavilion, he knew best the benefits of sword pool in cultivation. Although there were disciples in the pavilion who had achieved breakthroughs here in the past, apart from his direct disciple Lingfeng, no one was as monstrous as Gu Changqing. The speed at which his cultivation level improves is simply unbelievable. You have to know that Lingfeng is his successor whom he has spent countless efforts to cultivate, and all kinds of rare resources are at his disposal. However, Gu Changqing was just a newly arrived registered disciple, and the gap in resources between the two was like an insurmountable chasm. However, this kid's talent in martial arts is not inferior to Lingfeng at all. How wonderful! I really was not wrong. Ha ha! Sun Tong's hearty laughter echoed in the air, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Palace Master Jiang Yinshan stroked his beard and nodded, smiling, and said, "Elder Son, you have indeed dug up a good seedling for the 7 Xuanwu Palace. From now on, Gu Changqing will be taught by you personally." As soon as he finished speaking, the space around him gradually distorted, and his slender figure turned into a white light and disappeared in an instant. Teach it in person? Sun Tong shook his head and smiled bitterly, a hint of helplessness flashing in his eyes. Didn't he also want to accept Gu Changqing as his personal disciple? But this guy's character is unpredictable, and he never has that intention. With Sun Tong's many years of experience, he naturally understood that such geniuses should not be forced. If not handled properly, it would push them further away. Therefore, during this period of time, he could only operate secretly, and as long as it was within his ability, he would appropriately strive for some experience opportunities for Gu Changqing. Fortunately, Gu Changqing did not disappoint his expectations after all, and during this training in the sword pool, he earned enough face in front of the Mansion Lord. Thinking of Xiao Wuhin's shocked expression just now, Sun Tong couldn't help but stroke his beard and smile. Master Xiao, I heard that your disciple Ling Feng is also going to participate in this martial arts conference. Xiao Wuhin's eyes swept over like a sword, his sleeves moving without wind, and he said in a cold voice, "Of course. Whether the 7 Xuanwu palaces can win the championship again depends on him." Sun Tong smiled without saying anything, but he already had something in mind. In his opinion, although Gu Changqing has scarce resources, in terms of martial art cultivation, he is not inferior to any genius in the history of the martial arts world. This training in the sword pool is the best proof. The key to opportunities and resources lies in luck. As long as Gu Changqing's luck is still there, catching up with the evil geniuses from all sides is only a matter of time. Then the two of them stopped watching and left. The effect of that training state just now was so powerful. In the sword pool, Gu Changqing felt the true energy surging in his body, and his heart was pounding. Unfortunately, he did not stay in this ethereal state for long. Otherwise, he might have been able to break through to the Xianin realm in one fell swoop. But even so, he has now gained great benefits. As his mind flashed, Gu Changqing's consciousness had already sunk into his dantian. He stared at the Yuandan's sword body in the sea of acupoints, and his face was filled with excitement. The shape of this Yuandan, turning into a sword, is simply mysterious. Come out. Gu Changqing's thought moved slightly, and a sword shadow about an inch long suddenly appeared in his palm. This sword shadow did not seem illusory, but rather like a real energy body. As it slowly rotated, it emitted a heart-pounding and sharp sword energy. What's even more peculiar is that the surface of the sword is covered with ice-blue frost patterns, like runes, and it has obviously inherited the icy properties of the Yuandan that was condensed from the cold marrow fruit it absorbed. Call out. Gu Changqing snapped his fingers, and the sword's shadow shot out instantly. The sharp sword light split the surface of the pool in front of him into two, and wherever it passed, crystal frost appeared on the water. What surprised him even more was that the sword shadow was constantly absorbing the sword energy in the pool, making the sword body more solid. Gu Changqing was keenly aware of this detail and immediately understood it. He had just broken through to the half-step Xianin realm, and his cultivation was still in a superficial state. At present, the sword energy in the pool can be used as nutrients to consolidate the shape of the sword talisman. Suck it for me. Gu Changqing's mind moved, and the sword talisman suspended in the center of the sword pool trembled violently, bursting out with astonishing sword intent. Under the cover of this sword intent, the sword energy floating in the pool seemed to be summoned by the Emperor and instantly turned into streams of light and poured into the sword talisman. In an instant, the originally illusory sword body became solid at a speed visible to the naked eye, and its edge became sharper and sharper. All night long, the sword talismans were greedily absorbing the energy in the sword pool without stopping. Even though these energies were only the tip of the iceberg in the sword pool, they allowed the sword talisman to grow rapidly. Bang! At dawn, a dazzling sword light emerged from the water like a dragon, instantly creating a splash of water several feet high. Gu Changqing raised his hand, and the sword talisman broke through the air. In a blink of an eye, it was suspended above his fingertips, slowly rotating. Compared to the state when it just broke through last night, the sword energy emitted by the sword talisman at this moment is undoubtedly sharper. Once the sword is shot out, even those at the peak of the Yuandan realm would probably find it difficult to withstand it. Not bad. Changqing raised the corner of his mouth slightly, feeling quite satisfied with what he had gained from his training in the sword pool. Even though he was only at the half-step Xianin realm, he could at least be fearless during the 3-month martial arts conference. After all, improving one's own strength is the key. What's more, he couldn't expose his Zerg monsters at such a martial arts event, so he had to rely on himself for everything. It seems that only one day has passed. We can still go to other training sites. Changqing looked up at the gradually brightening sky and smiled expectantly. What? One day? In the system space, Tiger Bee suddenly screamed, "Master, you are not losing your memory, are you? It has been 7 days. 7 days!" Changqing was shocked when he heard this. Previously, when he was immersed in the mysterious state of sword energy tempering, he had indeed entered a state of oblivion of both himself and the world. But I didn't expect that time would pass so quickly. It is true that cultivation does not require time, and the cold does not require years. Changqing couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Originally, he had planned to use the special exemption order to practice for a longer period of time in the Kixuanwu Palace. But today is the day we agreed with Feng Baiyu and others to go to the northern wilderness. Well, there's still a long way to go. Changqing suddenly raised his eyebrows and smiled, then jumped out of the sword pool. Set off. Look, he's coming out. Outside the sword pool. As soon as Changqing's figure appeared, he immediately caused an uproar. I actually stayed in the sword pond for 7 days, disrupting my training plan. That's right. Cutting in line is one thing, but it takes up so much time. The disciples of Jianshao Pavilion, who had been waiting for a long time, cast dissatisfied glances. Especially those who were supposed to enter the sword pool to practice in the next few days. Their eyes were full of hostility at this moment. If you occupy the toilet without doing anything, you may not get anything no matter how long you stay there. If senior brother Ling Feng hadn't gone out for training, how could he have the chance to show off here? Yes, I remember that the eldest brother also has a special exemption order. In terms of qualifications, he is definitely more important than this kid. When the name Ling Feng was mentioned, all the disciples in the field showed admiration on their faces. In Jianshao Pavilion, Ling Feng is the legend of their generation. You know, the rules set by the martial arts tournament require new disciples who have not participated in previous tournaments. Because of this rule, all the major martial arts schools tacitly started to play tricks to find loopholes. At each event, some talented disciples will be deliberately retained as secret trump cards for the next competition, and then they will shine. The 7 Xuanwu mansions are naturally no exception, and Ling Feng is the finale figure of this session. While everyone was talking, Changqing had slowly walked to the front of the crowd. He ignored the strange looks from the people around him, walked straight towards the black-robed deacon on duty, and said calmly, "I want to visit Elder Sunday. Please lead the way." The black-robed deacon was slightly startled when he heard this, but Changqing now had a special exemption order and did have this privilege. "Well, follow me." He nodded indifferently, turned around, and led the way. Changqing looked calm and followed. The key to being able to practice in the sword pool of the 7 profound martial palace this time was due to Sun Tong's favor. Now that he was leaving, he should have said goodbye. You want to leave after taking advantage? It's not that easy. However, at this moment, a cold snort suddenly came from the crowd. The one who spoke was the inner disciple, Qingming. He practiced the moonlight sword style and originally wanted to use the sword pool to break through the bottleneck on a full moon night. However, because of Changqing's interference, he missed the best opportunity of this month. Qingming stared at Changqing's back, anger surging in his eyes. The more he thought about it, the more unwilling he felt. He immediately used his energy secretly, made a sword gesture with his hand, and flicked his fingers. Call out. In an instant, a sharp white sword light broke through the air and pierced Changqing's back. "Master, be careful." The voices of 6 insect beasts sounded in Gu Changqing's mind at the same time. Gu Changqing didn't even turn his head, but just raised his right hand slightly, and with a flash of cold light, the sword talisman suddenly flew out. The next moment, there was only a loud bang. The tiny sword light that attacked from behind him exploded into pieces in an instant. However, the sword symbol's remaining force did not diminish, and it reversed along the same trajectory, moving so fast that it left a piercing whistle in the air. Qin Ming's pupils suddenly contracted. He didn't expect Gu Changqing to react so quickly and even launch a counterattack in an instant. The cold light seemed to contain some kind of sharp sword intent, and its speed was astonishingly fast. Laugh! The sword symbol flashed by, and blood splattered. Qin Ming didn't even have time to react before he felt a piercing pain in his right hand. He looked down and saw that except for the thumb, the other 4 fingers were broken off and had fallen to the ground. The scarlet blood gushed out from the severed finger, which was extremely eye-catching. My hand! Ah! A shrill scream suddenly rang out. Qin Ming staggered back several steps, his face extremely pale. The sudden scene made the surrounding Jianshao pavilion disciples gasp. The whole place fell silent in an instant. You know, those are the finger bones required to perform the moonlight sword style. With these 4 fingers broken, Qin Ming's path to swordsmanship would probably be largely ruined. What's going on? The deacon on duty turned around abruptly and frowned at the situation in front of him. When he saw that Qin Ming had 4 fingers cut off, his eyes darkened and he looked sideways at Gu Changqing. Gu Changqing did not respond to this. He lightly hooked his finger, and the sword talisman instantly turned into a cold light and flew back, hovering above his fingertips. What greatest sword is this? The disciples finally saw the sword symbol that had just attacked Qin Ming, and they all looked at it in disbelief. The sword talisman was only an inch long, crystal clear, and covered with ice blue frost patterns. It was spinning lightly on Gu Changqing's fingertips, emitting a heart-pounding chill. Wrong. This is not a sword. Several sharp-eyed disciples of Jianshao Pavilion had already seen the clues at this time. They discovered that although the sword symbol looked solid, it was not a physical entity, but a sword body condensed from energy. Moreover, that kind of energy fluctuation is extremely similar to the Yuandan aura of a warrior. The Yuandan turns into a sword? Someone exclaimed in a low voice. Oh my God, this is actually a sword pill. As soon as these words were spoken, the whole place fell silent. To achieve this mysterious form, one must perfectly integrate one's own Yuandan with the sword intent to form the shape of a swordan. You! How dare you! Qin Ming covered his severed hand and glared at Gu Changqing, his eyes filled with disbelief and horror. He never imagined that he, a dignified inner sect disciple, would have his sword finger crippled in public by a registered disciple. What shocked him even more was that Gu Changqing had only been practicing in the sword pool for 7 days, but his strength had soared to such a terrifying level. Since you dare to attack first, why shouldn't I dare? Gu Changqing had a cold expression, and there was a hint of murderous intent in his words. If this place was not the Kixuanwu Palace, the sword talisman's attack just now would have been more than just a lesson. Qin Ming's face turned pale, and he was suddenly speechless. Brother Steward, if someone in the mansion attacks, will they be punished? Gu Changqing turned his gaze to the deacon on duty nearby, obviously unwilling to give up. The deacon was slightly startled when he heard this and looked at Gu Changqing deeply. This guy is really a ruthless character. Not only did he cripple the opponent's sword finger, but now he wants to punish him. According to government regulations, those who seek to cause trouble will be deprived of half a year's worth of training resources. The on-duty deacon's eyes shone, and he said in a routine voice, Qin Ming, you attacked first, and Gu Changqing was acting in self-defense. Do you have any objection to this punishment? Qin Ming frowned and said angrily, but he is just a nominal disciple. I am from the inner courtyard of Jianshao Pavilion. Shut up. At this moment, a cold shout suddenly rang out. Hearing the voice, everyone's face changed slightly, and they all looked up. I saw a long-haired young man coming with a sword, his figure in snow-white clothes floating in the air, his face as sharp as a knife, handsome and cold. It's senior brother Ling Feng. He has returned from his training. The crowd suddenly became agitated, looking at the long-haired young man, floating in the air with fiery eyes, their eyes full of admiration. Big brother, you have to make the decision for me. When Qin saw Ling Feng, he immediately complained aggrievedly. This man was so cruel that he broke my finger. As he spoke, he glared at Gu Changqing angrily, with a sneer on his face. If he had the support of the best of the younger generation in Jianshao Pavilion, this kid would be dead. Unexpectedly, Ling Feng's next words made his smile freeze on his face instantly. If you're not as skilled as others, you should go back and practice hard. What kind of skill is it to attack someone from behind? Ling Feng glanced at him coldly. You can't even beat a registered disciple, and you still have a nerve to call yourself a disciple of Jianshao Pavilion's inner courtyard? Hearing this, Qin Ming's expression suddenly changed, and the palm covering the severed finger trembled slightly. He never expected that the person he relied on would scold him in public. This change came so suddenly that his mind went blank. Amidst the sounds of exclamations, Ling Feng stood with his hands behind his back. The curve of his lips deepened a little, and it was obvious that he was enjoying this subtle atmosphere of being praised by everyone. Gu Changqing sighed silently in his heart. I thought he was a sensible person, but I didn't expect him to be such a hypocritical and pretentious person. But I have to admit that this guy does have enough to be proud of. Judging from Lin Chen's memories of his previous life, Ling Feng's performance in this martial arts conference can be said to be brilliant. Although he missed the championship in the end, he still defeated all the competitors and won the honor of second place. He is a recognized sword-fighting genius among the younger generation in the martial arts world. Your name is Gu Changqing, right? I just returned to Wu Mansion today, and I have heard a lot about your deeds. Ling Feng's eyes were sharp, scanning Gu Changqing like a sword, and his tone was low and meaningful. I heard that you will participate in this martial arts conference. Exactly. Gu Changqing looked calm and responded indifferently. Ling Feng's lips curled slightly, as if smiling. If the pavilion master hadn't mentioned it himself, I wouldn't have known that this matter had already been decided. Only at this point he paused, and then continued. It's a pity for those fellow disciples who have been practicing hard day and night and looking forward to it. I'm afraid that all their efforts will be wasted this time. As he spoke, he glanced at the disciples around him with a hint of meaning. As expected, the incident was exposed, and the crowd went wild in an instant. This is impossible. The martial arts competition concerns the reputation of the martial arts school, and they actually want to select a registered disciple. Yes, how can such an important competition be handed over to an outsider? Everyone was talking about it, and countless surprised and doubtful looks were cast at Gu Changqing. Even the deacon on duty stood there in a daze, his face filled with astonishment. Apparently, this decision has not yet been officially announced within the government. Gu Changqing frowned slightly and fixed his eyes on Ling Feng. This guy deliberately revealed the inside story in advance, clearly trying to incite everyone and embarrass himself. Yes, my identity is indeed just a registered disciple. Gu Changqing glanced at everyone present with a faint sneer on his face, but this is a decision made by the top management of the 7 Xuanwu palaces. Anyone who has any objections can go and argue with them. So, there is no need to go against my will. There is no point in doing so. When he said the last sentence, Gu Changqing's gaze fell on Ling Feng again with a double meaning. After hearing this, the voices of the crowd gradually faded away until they were as silent as a mouse. Even if they were dissatisfied in their hearts, they didn't dare to go to the pavilion master or the elders to make trouble. Otherwise, you will be asking for trouble. When everyone was silent, Ling Feng's eyes moved slightly. Although he had doubts about the Wu Mansion's decision, he was not in a position to speak out. He wanted to use everyone's words to put pressure on him, but unexpectedly, Gu Changqing resolved the public opinion that was unfavorable to him with just a few words and even turned the spearhead towards the elders. Brother Ling Feng, do you think what I said makes sense? Gu Changqing raised the corner of his mouth and asked deliberately. To maintain his composure, Ling Feng could only nod and say, Junior Brother Gu is absolutely right. This is the decision made by the higher-ups of the Wu Mansion, and it is not something that juniors like us can discuss. As he said this, he suddenly changed the subject and looked at Gu Changqing meaningfully. Since the quota has been decided, I can only hope that Junior Brother Gu will not hold everyone back at the martial arts conference. Gu Changqing said calmly, Do your best. After saying that, he had no interest in continuing to talk to the other party, so he turned around and left. Ling Feng's eyes fixed as he watched Gu Changqing's back gradually moving away, the corners of his mouth slowly rising. This junior brother is neither arrogant nor impatient, and has a calm mind. Just as Elder Sun said, he is indeed outstanding. If we have such a person with us, we will definitely have a better chance of winning this martial art competition. I'm afraid he looked down on me during my previous test, but it's worth it. As his mind flashed, Ling Feng suddenly stood up. He pointed his toes, and the energy surged, transforming into a flowing sword shadow that flew away with the wind.
Hello, everyone! As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500-plus novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.